So, you want to hear a story, huh? Well, gather around and let me spin you the tale of our saga etched in power and chaos. You may think it begins with the discovery of those mystical prisons, the vaults, filled with horror yet brimming with untold treasures. But this tale is about more than the vaults. It's about falsehoods, false vaults, false heroes, false gods. Pandora herself is a falsehood, an illusion brought about by the ambition of ancient powers long ago. And it's with them that our story truly begins.
Tonight's the night, we're gonna take off these chains. We'll never mend. It came with a warning, now we're all out of time. Sit back, relax, begin. It's too early for surrender, too late for a prayer. We can't go down.
The story of Borderlands begins with a woman named Nereid. It's unknown where Nereid originated from, or what she looked like. However, we do know that she was a Siren, and a powerful one at that. The origins of the Sirens are also largely shrouded in mystery, so much so that not even Nereid herself knew of their true nature. Despite this, the little we think we know is that there can only be 6 Sirens at a given time, no more, no less. Each time a Siren dies, their abilities, or for some, curses, are inherited by another woman of the Siren's choice. If left undecided, their abilities are distributed to another woman, willingly or otherwise. And while this choice could possibly be random, it's still contained within the confines of an unforeseen force, one that has presumably kept the Sirens together since their inception. This force, this will of the universe, is described by Nereid as an entwinement, forever braiding the lives of Sirens together. This would naturally lead to the formation of what Nereid called the Sisterhood, a collective of most, if not all the Sirens of her time that, from Nereid's writings, seemed to function as a family. As Sirens, the Sisterhood would live under constant threat of what others might do to them, always hunted out of fear, jealousy, or misguided greed. So became their way of life, always hiding or running from those who meant them harm, which is why it was so surprising when a civilization known as the Eridians would contact Nereid, asking for her help. Upon contact, the Sisterhood didn't hesitate to attack the Eridians. Instinct told them that outsiders simply weren't capable of understanding them on a deeper level, that they could only ever be seen as threats or commodities. But as they prepared to strike, Nereid intervened, recognizing a familiar desperation in the Eridians' plea for help. Despite her sister's reservations, she couldn't ignore the resonance of their call, knowing all too well the feeling of being overlooked until the moment of dire need. With a heavy heart, she made the decision to entertain their request, understanding that those who were desperate enough to seek her aid must have been deeply lost. After joining the Eridians, Nereid would come to learn both a great deal and paradoxically very little about their origins, mostly discovering that when they arrived in this galaxy, they landed on a planet that they would dub Necrotafeo. Translated from Eridian, it means first landing. This alludes to a history before they traveled here. However, the details of where they came from and why they left are still unclear. Alongside their history, she would learn of their incredibly advanced technology, so advanced that it was borderline magical, even to a Siren. Technology such as their powerful energy-based weaponry, their automated protective guardians, and above all, the vaults. Once again, it's unclear as to the origin and purpose behind most of the vaults. The little we do know is that while some are meant to keep people out, others are meant to keep something inside. Powerful artifacts that can alter the fabric of reality and foresee the future, as well as monsters like the Rampager, Grave Ward, Githian, and the most powerful of them all, the Destroyer. While traveling with the Eridians, Nereid would note that they never spoke of a time before the Destroyer, like it was simply a piece of the fabric of the universe, a part of the natural order of things, though they fully intended to change that. Nereid suspected that to do this, they sought out the Destroyer to learn as much as they could. What they learned was that it was an unstoppable force, a gluttonous beast that never ceased to hunger. With no idea how to stop something this powerful, the Eridians went searching for other solutions, possibly other beings that could rival its strength. That's when they must have learned about Nereid and her extraordinarily powerful ability to leech power from others to make herself stronger. With her assistance, the Eridians finally had hope that their new plan would work, to build a planet-sized prison to trap the Destroyer once and for all. This planet would eventually become known as Pandora. The construction of Pandora was a project that's scope was unimaginably large, being far more ambitious than any other task the Eridians had attempted, so much so that it would transcend generations, taking multiple centuries to complete. A major reason for this were the materials required for its construction, most notably the upper mantle, which consisted of solid iridium, a versatile and incredibly valuable resource that would serve as the primary method of containment. This, however, posed a risk. If anyone were to discover the abundance of iridium on Pandora, it might attract the wrong kind of attention. When Pandora was finally complete, it was seen as the most incredible thing of its kind, an inescapable, planet-sized prison. All that was left was to lure the Destroyer to it, but for that, it would take great sacrifice. The Destroyer was not only unmatched in strength, but also a formidably intelligent being, as when it consumed civilizations, it gained their experiences and intellect. This made it necessary for the Eridians to lure it in with a bait so enticing the Destroyer couldn't possibly resist it. It soon became clear that this bait would have to be themselves. Hundreds of millions, or perhaps billions, of some of the most advanced minds in the universe, all sacrificed in the pursuit of peace. Though with this plan came other complications, the first of which were those Eridians that rebelled against the rest, attempting to sabotage Pandora to appease the Destroyer in hopes that it would spare their life. For them, a great beast named the Warrior was constructed, its purpose being that of a war machine. After successfully defeating the resisting Eridians, the Warrior would be placed within the confines of a vault, where it would remain until it could one day be given another command. Another issue that warranted consideration was the fact that once the Eridians were gone, there would no longer be anyone to throw away the key, so to speak. Due to this, they instead opted to disguise the prison's key as none other than an inconspicuous moon, something that would be so unremarkable that not even the potential residents of Pandora would think twice about it. Inside this moon, a powerful artifact that could foresee the future was placed inside a vault, protected by both guardians as well as another being of Eridian creation known as the Sentinel. Lastly, all prisoners must be fed, even the Destroyer. For this, they would place a false vault on the planet's surface that would call out to nearby souls every 200 years. This would keep it at least reasonably well fed, as there is nothing more dangerous than a hungry prisoner. With their many loose ends now tied, the only thing that remained was to lay the trap. As planned, the Destroyer approached Pandora, unable to resist the bait. At that point, it was finally time for Nereid to fulfill her terrible purpose. She would siphon the life and power of the billion or so remaining Eridians, using their energy to power a device on Necrotafeo that would later become known as the Machine. An act that would finally, after all this time, imprison the Destroyer. While the plan to imprison the destroyer was successful, Nereid was absolutely devastated. She knew that she had achieved a great victory for not only the Eridians, but also countless lives that would be saved now that the destroyer was gone. But this didn't put an end to her grief. What was victory if it was at the cost of those who she now thought of as friends? But for the time being, Nereid would travel across the galaxy, assessing the fallout of the Eridians' disappearance. As she explored, she became curious about the guardians the Eridians left behind. These, as Nereid calls them, half-living or quasi-beings, were both fascinating and uncanny to Nereid. Fascinating in the sense that they held great purpose, that being to guard the vaults and other key Eridian locations, though uncanny in the sense that they were so close to sentience, yet weren't granted full autonomy, though they don't seem to mind it, like they have some other purpose that is beyond her comprehension. This curiosity naturally birthed a question. What will happen to the Guardians when the fight is over? When all of the vaults have been pillaged? Will they stand vigil? Or will they find some other, greater purpose? And if so, what's stopping them from doing that now? As time passed, Nereid became increasingly disillusioned with her own life, fearing what may happen if her powers were to fall into the wrong hands. This in turn led to a decline in health that further compounded her already insurmountable fears. Her sisters knew of these fears, as well as her declining health, and worked to find a way to keep her powers from passing on. What they found was a possible solution to her problem. To keep her Siren power from being inherited, she would have to lock herself inside a vault. Nereid knew that there was no certainty that this would work. However, the pros far outweighed the cons, for she knew that if the universe had no leech, it would be ultimately safer. But before she would attempt this, she would first travel the galaxy, using her Siren abilities to imprint key memories of hers onto Eridian glyphs. This would allow her to share her side of the story, spread knowledge of the Eridians, and in the end, give one final warning. Before she would make her way into a vault on Necrotafeo, she would warn to never find the seventh. Whether this was a warning to avoid looking for her is unclear, as it could just as easily be a warning to avoid a much bigger threat, possibly one that's even more powerful than herself, an elusive seventh Siren that has the possibility to change everything we know so far. With her story spread among the stars, Nereid would make her way to Necrotafeo, the location where she forever changed the universe. She would open a vault and travel inside, imprisoning herself and her power for what she hoped would be forever. Millennia pass, and humanity, after developing faster than light travel, managed to colonize a half-dozen galaxies. Known as the Six Galaxies, they were ruled by a central government, as well as a few dozen megacorporations that specialize in manufacturing and providing an untold number of goods and services. But as humanity grew and the universe seemed to get bigger, so did the business of warfare. And as decades passed, most of these corporations would fight tooth and nail for their own slice in that ever-growing market. This chaos would ultimately end in the collapse of the central government. The fall of the central government would subsequently create a vacuum of power that many of the corporations desperately attempted to fill. To foster peace at this time, a 30-year accord was agreed upon by all the major corporations, though merely 4 months later, this agreement would shatter under the weight of corporate greed. This was what sparked the legendary corporate wars. As the corporate wars raged on for nearly a decade, many of the companies we are unaware of were consolidated into those that stand now. These include Atlas, Tedior, Dahl, Torg, Vladoff, Malawan, and Hyperion. There were others such as Jacobs and SS Munitions that also survived, though this was largely due to the clever ways in which they were able to avoid conflict altogether. With the reduced number of corporations grasping for power, the Six Galaxies were able to find some semblance of peace. Decades later, the once powerful Atlas Corporation was falling behind in the corporate arms race. Becoming desperate for any kind of advantage, Atlas began searching for increasingly far-fetched opportunities that might get them back on their feet. One such attempt had Atlas hiring explorers from across the 6 galaxies to search for alien ruins and technology. One of these explorers was a man named Typhon DeLeon. Typhon was born to a family of turd farmers on the now sparsely populated borderland planet of Pandora. Despite his circumstances, he was a natural-born adventurer, exploring ancient ruins and searching for artifacts for as long as he could remember. However, at the age of 16, his parents would pass away, and with their passing, he found that the reasons to stay on Pandora were far outweighed by his desire to leave. So he did, sneaking aboard a merchant ship bound for the planet Promethea, the home of Atlas. When Typhon arrived on Promethea, it was but a husk of its former self due to the steady downfall of Atlas. What he thought would be a thriving, opportunity-filled playground turned out to be, in his words, a tinderbox of violence and greed. This was only made worse by his financial situation. He never had much on Pandora, but on Promethea, he somehow had even less. But even with nothing to his name, Typhon still had his talent for storytelling, which he would use to keep himself alive, trading stories for things such as food, water, and shelter. It's at this point that Typhon would meet a man named Aslan de Vega, a treasure hunter like him, though he found Aslan to be both lazy and undetermined, but it was still nice to have a partner. Shortly afterward, both Typhon and Aslan would be hired by Atlas to search Promethea for Eridian ruins. At this point, the Eridians were rumored to have existed, yet no hard evidence had been found linking them to any specific ancient ruins. But Typhon was determined to prove himself as the greatest treasure hunter who had ever lived, so he and Aslan would set out to search for any and every lead they could. As time passed, Typhon and Aslan would find no evidence of Eridian ruins on Promethea. Aslan was ready to give up, but Typhon had a feeling that they were close. One day, when they were wandering through the Casmerian quarry, Typhon fell through some brittle rock into a deep cavern. Aslan, being his lazy self, refused to help, instead stealing Typhon's equipment and running away. Typhon then got up and decided to find another way out. That's when he found it. The first great discovery of his lifetime, a vault with a fully intact key sitting right at its entrance. Now, some may see this as pure luck, but as Typhon saw it, sometimes luck is simply staying in the game longer than the other guys. Not many people were willing to spend years of their lives in search of what most believed were fairy tales. But he was, and he was about to reap the rewards of it. After finding the vault, Typhon decided to resist the urge to open it for himself and instead fulfill his contract to Atlas. He brought them the key, and for it, he was paid handsomely in both cash as well as attention. From now on, whenever anyone wanted help searching for something, they came to the greatest treasure hunter in the 6 galaxies, and the first of a new breed of explorer, ones who'd become known as Vault Hunters. Atlas, of course, didn't hesitate to open the vault, where they found an abundance of Eridian weapons and technology. Immediately, they tasked their researchers and scientists with reverse engineering the technology so they could apply it to their own weapons and equipment. This resulted in advanced technology far beyond that of any other corporation. So began a second win for the Atlas Corporation, going from near bankruptcy to the pinnacle of innovation almost instantaneously. Finally living up to their name and becoming titans of industry once more. While at the top of their game, Atlas decided to invest heavily in themselves to keep the company in their current state of power for as long as possible. For this, they would hire Typhon, as well as many other explorers, including a woman named Lady Calypso, to continue searching for more vaults. This was primarily done on Pandora, though in the next few years, they would opt to leave Pandora as it was uniquely dangerous. On the business side, Atlas would quadruple their standing army, as well as finance the Crimson Lance and their Crimson Assassin counterparts, both of which were major reasons for their subsequent dominance. This, however, started an arms race unlike anything anyone had ever seen, with most megacorporations scrambling to catch up to, or simply survive, Atlas's rise to power. Chief among these were Jacobs, Dahl, and of course, Hyperion. The Jacobs Corporation was founded over 300 years before Atlas opened the first vault, after the Jacobs battleship known as the Family Jewel crash-landed on a moon of Eden known as Eden 6. While this was tragic at the time, Singleton, Talbot, Jacobs would turn their family's misfortune into a thriving business. This came after the discovery of the immeasurably high-quality wood within the trees on Eden 6, which Talbot would use to manufacture weapons under the name Jacobs. Unlike many other companies, Jacobs would refrain from resorting to unconventional business practices or flashy gimmicks to sell their products, instead attempting to focus solely on their craftsmanship in hopes that it would allow them to stand the test of time. However, after Talbot passed, the company would be inherited by his son Wharton, who wasn't nearly as idealistic as his father. Under his leadership, the company would begin to broaden its horizons, expanding to places such as Gehenna. It's there, on a planet far from civilization, that the company would conduct experiments on an element called core, which had a multitude of harmful biological applications, the most dangerous of which was something called Project Ruiner, an extremely dangerous and powerful monster developed with the use of core. Where at first they saw promise with the Ruiner, it was quickly becoming clear that their ambitions were far exceeding what they were capable of controlling. Soon enough, they would decide to give up on the planet entirely, glassing the surface of it without the slightest regard for the planet's residents. But just because the company moved on, it would not be the end for the citizens of Gehenna, as what Jacobs did on the planet would have unforeseen consequences generations later. After the rapid expansion of Jacobs, it became clear that the company functioned best when held to its core values, a realization likely kindled by Wharton's brother Maddox after he inherited the company, though those values would be solidified by his nephew and Wharton's son, Montgomery Jacobs. Montgomery would be the one to end a good portion of the company's unsavory business practices, and though he wasn't perfect, would attempt to keep the company out of troubling conflict. It's at that point that Montgomery would stumble upon the biggest discovery of the Jacobs family, a vault hidden right on Eden 6. Montgomery would decide to hide the vault, as even with his limited knowledge, he could perceive its importance. This proved correct after Atlas opened their vault, and it sparked nothing short of absolute chaos. Chaos that he would do anything to avoid. Over a decade after Atlas found the first vault, the Dahl Corporation began secretly searching for a vault of their very own. Either coincidentally, or being unknowingly called there by the Destroyer's false vault, the planet they went searching on was none other than Pandora. Upon landing on Pandora, Dahl attempted to do two things: mine and explore. The mining ended up becoming fairly lucrative, as they would end up discovering iridium just below the planet's crust. However, they were unaware of the true extent of their discovery. Despite this, hundreds of mines and quarries would be built across the planet's surface, the crown jewel of which would be Sanctuary, a mining ship that Dahl held in high regard. Around this same time, Dahl mining operations on Elpis, Pandora's moon, led to a disastrous event known as the Krakening. As a result, a legion of Dahl soldiers, led by a woman named Colonel Zarpedon, obtained access to hidden Eridian ruins underneath the moon's surface. Zarpedon explored these ruins, where an Eridian guardian known as the Watcher would take her and her legion into the Vault of the Sentinel and show them the distant future. In this future, it became clear that they must finish what the Eridians couldn't, and throw away the key once and for all. While mining for resources, Dahl did anything they could to get bodies on Pandora. This resulted in the Echo promotional campaign, which would have Dahl hand out Echo devices to anyone who was willing to accept them. As an added benefit, this would get people to use their Echo communications network, aka the EchoNet. Unfortunately, soon afterward, Pandora would become nothing short of a hellscape, as unknown to Dahl, they arrived on the planet during one of its 7-year winters. Now that winter was over, the majority of the fauna on the planet were leaving hibernation, which led to a planet-wide panic. In the midst of this panic, a group of scientists contracted by Dahl would begin searching for a vault on Pandora. One of these scientists was an archaeologist named Patricia Tanis. Tanis came to Pandora a skeptic, assuming the stories of the vault were just that, stories. But as she continued to do research, despite her associates' brutal deaths, she would not only believe in the vault, but discover proof of its existence by finding fragments of the vault's key. She would also learn of the 200-year cycle the vault was tied to, one that was quickly arriving. At this time, Dahl had called for all employees to leave Pandora. However, with dwindling resources, many were simply left to fend for themselves, becoming those who make up the good majority of bandits and psychos on Pandora. However, there were exceptions, such as Dahl's highly regarded 191st Infantry Brigade, commanded by Colonel Hector. Before arriving on Pandora, Colonel Hector and his brigade were some of the most decorated soldiers in Dahl's military. Due to their elite status, Dahl would promise Hector that his team would receive Paradise deployment, which would have them far from their usual combat theater. However, instead of Paradise, Colonel Hector and his brigade found themselves in a notoriously dangerous mine underneath Mount Scarab. Months later, on the day that Dahl would abandon Pandora, they would trap Colonel Hector and the 191st Brigade in the mine, stranding them for years to come. After discovering Dahl's secret mission to search for a vault on Pandora, Atlas resumed their quest once more. They would deploy the Crimson Lance to finish off what was left of Dahl's forces. Given no option, Dahl would cement its decision to abandon the planet altogether. Now, this truly unruly planet was Atlas's to tame once more. Meanwhile, in a remote corner of the galaxy, a Dahl research team led by Eleanor and Vincent Olmsted land on the planet of Xylorgos. There, they encounter the massive carcass of Githian, a mysteriously diseased vault monster. While attempting to excavate Githian's body, they stumble upon its still-beating heart. Vincent is then inadvertently absorbed by the heart, where his soul is trapped within a crystalline structure. Overwhelmed by grief, Eleanor forges a ring from the crystal, discovering it contains her husband's soul. Using the ring's power, she binds it to others to be with her husband once again. Together, Eleanor and Vincent's vessel form a cult called the Bonded, who become obsessed with the power of Githian's heart. With nearly complete control over Pandora, Atlas's esteemed General Knox would appoint a Siren named Commandant Steele to oversee Atlas operations on Pandora. During this time, Atlas would hire bandits to overrun the town of Haven. This forced its residents to abandon the location, moving to the subsequent town of New Haven, which then dubbed its predecessor Old Haven. Afterwards, Atlas would double-cross and kill the hired bandits to make room for a cutting-edge facility constructed underneath Old Haven, known as the Gortys Project. This project was developed to find an elusive vault that Atlas had become aware of, known as the Vault of the Traveler. During this eventful period of what most considered to be a battle between Dahl and Atlas, the Hyperion Corporation would stay hidden in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A moment that would be decided not by a board of Hyperion executives, but instead by a single man who was but a measly programmer. Many things about Jack's early life are unknown, likely due to the fact that anyone who knew Jack at that time is most likely dead. We do know he was born on the planet Tantalus, where at a young age, his father passed away. This resulted in Jack's mother moving them to Pandora, where she pawned him off to his grandmother, who was emotionally abusive, leading Jack to focus solely on his passion for programming. This set Jack on a path that would eventually lead him to join the mighty Hyperion Corporation. It was likely around this same time that Jack had met a mysterious woman who, to this day, we do not know the appearance or name of. We do know that she would eventually marry Jack, and together they would have a daughter named Angel. Despite Jack exhibiting behaviors of narcissism, sociopathy, and megalomania, it wouldn't stop him from being a loving husband and father. Even after his life would forever change when Angel would inherit the powers and markings of a Siren. More specifically, the phase shift ability, which allowed her to freely access and manipulate technology. This would allow her to, in a way, communicate with all sorts of technology. At first, Jack saw this as the simple manifestation of a child's imagination, but when he saw her tattoos, he quickly became worried. Attempting to remain rational, Jack would contact numerous medical professionals to examine Angel's tattoos as well as her new strange behavior toward technology. However, sirens and their abilities were still relatively unknown, so no immediate conclusions could be reached. Seeing as Jack, as well as others, weren't exactly sure what they were dealing with, word quickly got out that there was a young woman with strange abilities and markings on Pandora. Soon enough, a bandit who knew how rare sirens were would come after Angel. Once he got her hands on her, he attempted to kidnap her. However, Angel, in an act of fearful desperation, activated one of the bandit's turrets, killing him as well as her mother. With his wife gone, Jack's worst qualities would begin to surface. He would swear vengeance on every last bandit, seeing them as irredeemable monsters, the scum of Pandora. If he were a different man, maybe he would find some way to move on. But Jack was no man. He was a hero. He would rid Pandora of bandits, so no person would have to go through what he did. But accomplishing this task would be no easy feat. He would have to go to great lengths to find some way to cleanse the world. The first and greatest method would be with the use of Angel. As time went by, Jack would rise within the ranks of Hyperion while simultaneously learning the strengths and limits of Angel's phase shift abilities. With his mid-level programmer status, Jack was able to confine Angel to the room that housed the Hyperion network. This gave her access to nearly everything Hyperion had access to, which gave Jack an immense amount of knowledge and information, some of which he would use as leverage to rise within Hyperion, but most would be put toward his grandiose plan to cleanse Pandora. To accomplish this, he convinced Hyperion's board of directors that they should begin designing a space station in orbit of Pandora, as he had a feeling something big was about to happen there. After finding the vault, Typhon would be hired once more by Atlas to find additional vaults on Promethea, though after what would likely be months of searching, Typhon was unable to find another vault. Atlas suspected Typhon was holding out on them, but instead of persecuting him, they very strategically attempted to use his good-hearted adventurous nature for their own benefit by offering to let him lead a peace envoy around the galaxy to uphold Atlas's image. Typhon agreed, and for a while his envoy would travel to various planets across the galaxy. Planets like Athenas. There, he met with a few of the Sirens, one of which, a woman named Queen Dido, he dated while on Athenas. This was until she died, and a new faction of monks known as the Order of Impending Storm would take over. Not long after, an infant Siren by the name of Maya would be delivered to the Order. Soon after the Order's rise on Athenas, Typhon would move back to Promethea, where he would learn the truth of this so-called peace envoy that he had led. That it wasn't about peace at all. It was a ruse, as his team consisted of a handful of Atlas spies who were tasked with following Typhon to steal any artifacts of value that he may stumble across. Atlas also used this envoy as a way to distract Typhon, as while off Promethea, he had no clue what Atlas had been doing with the vault of his. But after his return, the truth would surface. Atlas wasn't doing what they told him they would do with the vault, which was to improve life on Promethea. Instead, they used it to seize power and oppress others. And while Typhon was furious, he was also contractually obligated to follow Atlas's orders, which lately had been to stay put. Not much time would pass before Typhon would decide enough was enough. He was growing restless, and Promethea, even after Atlas's rise, was growing worse by the day. Typhon would break his contract and travel off-world, roaming the galaxy in search of another adventure. Maybe this would lead him to discover another vault, or maybe he would find nothing at all. Who knows? After all, he stumbled into finding the vault by accident, so maybe he would just roam around for a while and see what else he might stumble across. After some time, Typhon would be hired once more, this time by none other than Montgomery Jacobs. Montgomery's plan was to let Typhon explore Eden 6 for a while, eventually concluding that there was indeed no vault on the planet. Typhon spent a long time on Eden 6 in search of the vault, long enough that he started to believe he lost his touch, that his days of vault hunting might be behind him. In fact, he was just about to call it quits until he noticed Montgomery seemed a bit too eager to accept Typhon's failure. That's when he got up and started going to the last spot he had yet to check, right under Montgomery's nose. Montgomery followed Typhon, asking him where he was going. Typhon said that he knew where he was going and continued forward until he heard the click of a revolver. Montgomery then says that Jacobs may have escaped the last war, but that the next one is coming. The War of the Vaults. With a gun to his back, Typhon is quick to agree that there is indeed no vault on Eden 6. Montgomery then smiles, hands Typhon his golden revolver, and says it was nice doing business with him. With his vault hunting itch scratched, Typhon decided he would travel back to Pandora to see how it had changed. You know, for old time's sake. But upon reaching Pandora, he notes that he had begun to feel the effects of his midlife crisis. He began to realize that he had gone on all these adventures, but to him, they were ultimately meaningless if he had nobody to share them with. Typhon would then continue to wander Pandora for a long time, attempting to find fulfillment in other ways. On one such trip from Elpis, Typhon's ship was suddenly shot down by none other than Aslan de Vega. They had met a few times since Aslan abandoned him way back when, but he had a feeling that this would be the final time. His ship then crashed on Pandora, leaving him both stranded and wounded. He would continue to run from Aslan and his crew for days on end, only catching the occasional break. This was until one day he decided that he would face Aslan regardless of the outcome. When Aslan caught up to him, Typhon used his knowledge from his youth to his advantage, luring a pack of skags to Aslan's location. The skags made quick work of Aslan, and Typhon continued his meaningless wandering until he decided to go back to his family farm to rediscover his roots as a simple turd farmer. Some time would pass before Typhon would find himself in a tavern in Firestone where a woman by the name of Leda Calypso would confront him. She would begin their encounter by asking for his help to find the legendary Eridian homeworld known as Necrotafeo. Typhon of course accepted this offer, and together they began searching Pandora in hopes of finding some clues of Necrotafeo's location. Along the way they began to fall in love, as well as save enough money to buy a ship and plenty of supplies so they could live out their dream of exploring the galaxy for the elusive planet of Necrotafeo. And wouldn't you know it, after months or possibly years of searching, they eventually stumbled upon the very thing they were looking for. After crash landing on Necrotafeo, Typhon would note that he had a weird feeling, the same feeling that he got when he was on a planet with a vault. Like he's not really searching for something, but instead following some sort of gut feeling, or call to his very soul. He would question if this feeling was in some way connected to the vaults, or maybe the planets themselves were connected. Regardless, he and Leda would follow that feeling into the heart of Necrotafeo, where they would find a great machine, as well as a lone vault. They would open this vault and fight a powerful monster named the Serpent. Afterwards, they would travel inside the vault, where they would conceive a pair of twins. They would then have a conversation of the importance of what they had stumbled across, a world of countless questions and likely many answers to them. They both came to agree that something of this importance couldn't be left for someone else to stumble across, so they would stay here for the rest of their lives to defend it, all the while finding answers to their biggest questions. 9 months later, Leda would give birth to a pair of conjoined fraternal twins, but to their surprise, that was nowhere near the most special thing about them, as they had not only given birth to 2 sirens, but that one of them was a male. Shortly after their birth, Typhon and Leda would name their children Tyreen and Troy DeLeon. Typhon would then cut the twins apart so they could live separate lives. This, however, had unknowingly started a timer on Troy's life, as Siren biology dictates that only women can possess Siren powers. Luckily, Tyreen had inherited possibly the only Siren ability capable of keeping Troy alive, Nereid's very own Phase Leech. This allowed Typhon to periodically transfer a bit of power to Troy, therefore keeping him alive. However, like Nereid was afraid of, it also caused a great deal of tragedy, when as a young child, Typhon accidentally killed her own mother. This single event would set the stage for what Typhon and Troy would eventually become, as the death of Leda would put a substantial distance between Typhon and the twins, though he would continue to do the one thing he had always done: tell stories. And what better story is there than the story of the Eridians and their great vault known as Pandora. With Angel being connected to the Hyperion network for over a year, Jack was able to learn quite a bit about two major things: the Sirens and the False Vault. The former he took interest in for obvious reasons, however it's the latter that he would put to use towards his heroic plan. Knowing the 200-year deadline was soon approaching, Jack, with the assistance of Angel, would lure aspiring vault hunters to collect the vault key and open the false vault. This was no easy task, as he had to find the correct vault hunters, ones who were capable enough to complete the task, yet oblivious enough to ignore the true prize within the vault. Soon enough, he would find the perfect fit, a group of 4 outcasts riding on a bus to the bandit-ridden town of Firestone. Roland, Lilith, Mordecai, and Brick. These are the names of the legendary vault hunters who would open the first vault on Pandora. Roland, being a former Crimson Lance soldier, would act as the leader of the group, providing direction and wisdom. Lilith, a Siren, became the group's primary powerhouse, for when she wasn't strategically avoiding conflict, she often ended it quickly. Mordecai and his loyal companion Bloodwing acted as the group's scouts, always far from conflict, but never avoiding it. And Brick? Well, Brick is Brick, and he's the prettiest. But long before this group would become known as the legendary explorers we know them to be, they were simply kids who had grown up hearing stories of the vault, a great treasure that would bring you all the fame and money you could ever desire. Hearing these stories, they would naturally decide to search for the vault in adulthood. As the false vault called out to nearby souls, one by one they would accept a bus ride by a man named Marcus Kincaid. As Marcus's bus approached the town of Firestone, Jack would instruct Angel to contact the Vault Hunters, telling them that they have no reason to trust her, but that if they do, she can assuredly get them to the vault. He then has her tell them to follow the guidance of a claptrap unit, which will provide them with what they need until she contacts them again. Once outside, Claptrap provides the Vault Hunters with their standard issue Dahl Echo communications device, which provides them with valuable information about both their well-being and weaponry. Claptrap then guides them to the town of Firestone, where they are met with a group of bandits who have overrun the town. The group make quick work of the bandits, to which they then meet with Dr. Zed, a local surgeon who tasks them to clean up the town as well as meet with the locals. After helping the locals of Firestone, the Vault Hunters are contacted by Scooter, a mechanic who maintains the local catch-a-ride stations. He sets them on a quest to reactivate the catch-a-ride stations, which gives them access to vehicles. Once accomplished, Angel contacts them once more, informing them that their next target is a dangerous bandit named Sledge, who resides in the nearby mine. After unlocking the mine, they fight their way through dozens of bandits before coming face to face with Sledge. After a tough battle, Sledge is defeated, and Angel's there to inform the Vault Hunters that what he had stashed away was proof that the legends were true, a fragment of the key that opens the vault. When exiting the mines, the Vault Hunters are contacted by none other than Commandant Steele. She states that the Eridian artifact they have stolen is sole property of Atlas, and that they should return it immediately. The Vault Hunters ignore this vague threat and carry out their new plan to travel to the nearby town of New Haven. Once arrived at New Haven, the Vault Hunters are contacted by both Helena Pierce and Patricia Tanis. Pierce is the administrator of New Haven, and as is her responsibility, she decides that her focus is on the people, not the vault, which she believes is nothing but a fairy tale. Tanis, on the other hand, knows the vault to be real, and is eager to help them find it. She then invites the Vault Hunters to meet with her so she can inspect the artifact they have found. After meeting with her, she correctly identifies it as a piece of the vault key, and instructs them to leave it with her so she can run tests on it. Meanwhile, she says they can go collect another piece of the key, one that she left with a man named Crazy Earl. After doing a few miscellaneous tasks for Crazy Earl, he informs them that he sold the key fragment about a year ago to a bandit leader named Crom. The Vault Hunters then travel to Crom's bandit camp and kill him, collecting the second fragment of the key. With the second key fragment collected, the Vault Hunters immediately take it back to Tanis. She informs them that the third piece is likely somewhere on the Trash Coast, however it's guarded by the residents of Janustown, led by a man named Janus Cobb. Taylor Cobb, his brother, notes that by killing him, they'd be doing everyone a service and could easily get to the Trash Coast. After killing Janus, the Vault Hunters are sent back to New Haven at the request of Taylor to collect their reward. However, this is a trap, and as Helena Pierce would soon note, Taylor was the wrong person to trust, as he is much more dangerous than his brother. The Vault Hunters are then made to clean up their own mess by killing Taylor Cobb. Along the way, Marcus notes multiple times that Tanis is somehow getting supplies from a third party, implying that she's been working for, or at least is in contact with, someone else. After Taylor Cobb is killed, Angel informs them that the third fragment is indeed in the Trash Coast, though a challenge awaits their arrival. When the Vault Hunters finally make it to their destination, they are met with a massive rak hive. After defeating it, they collect the third key fragment. Once the third fragment is given to Tanis, she informs the group that the final fragment is in the hands of a man named Baron Flint, who resides in the Salt Flats. However, to get to him, they must first repair a claptrap unit in the town of Old Haven. There they encounter the Crimson Lance, who, unknown to the Vault Hunters, are likely there to guard the Gortys project. With the claptrap unit repaired, it can now open the door to the Salt Flats. There, the Vault Hunters encounter bandit patrols which they take down before their final encounter with Baron Flint. After taking Baron down, they attempt to attain the fourth and final piece of the key. However, to their surprise, it's revealed by Commandant Steele that there is no fourth piece, and that Tanis gave the key to Atlas. After revealing she has the vault key, Commandant Steele gives the Vault Hunters one final offer: leave Pandora, and Atlas will let them live in peace. She then warns that any further disobedience will result in the citizens of this planet paying dearly. To prove this, she begins by shutting off the Echo Network and threatens to cut off all commerce if defiance continues. Without the Echo Net, Angel is unable to see the Vault Hunters clearly, but can still contact them directly using her Siren abilities. She warns them that they have to open the vault, as they, and secretly Jack, can't wait around for another 200 years. Without knowing where the vault is located, the Vault Hunters attempt to find Tanis inside an Atlas compound. After doing so, they learn that Tanis didn't betray them out of malice. Instead, she says that she had no other choice, and that in her own twisted way, she thought the Vault Hunters would like it. This seems to be truthful, as Roland, as well as the others, would forgive her because they likely saw that she, in fact, did not do it for purely selfish reasons. After helping Tanis escape her cell, the Vault Hunters attempt to bring the Echo Network back online. At the same time, Commandant Steele travels to the vault, which triggers an army of Eridian Guardians to take down any opposing force in defense of the vault. After bringing the Echo Network back online, Tanis informs them of the vault's location and that Steele is likely close to opening it. The Vault Hunters waste no time traveling to the vault, along the way encountering both Crimson Lance as well as Eridian Guardians. After making it to the top of the Eridian ruins, they finally come face to face with Commandant Steele. She tells them that she has repeatedly warned them to stay out of her way, but that now, the vault is property of the Atlas Corporation, and they belong to her. She then uses her siren powers to mend the fragmented key, inserting it into the vault's lock. The vault begins to open, and as the Eridians had planned, the Destroyer is hungry for a feast. During her final show of power, Commandant Steele and her elite Crimson Lance are instantly killed by the Destroyer. As the Vault Hunters begin to fight it, Angel notes that this form of the Destroyer is still powerful, though compared to its true self, is extremely limited, even killable to a certain extent. As the fight nears its end, the Vault Hunters are able to come out on top, killing the monster, or at least this tiny portion of it. Angel is quick to congratulate the Vault Hunters on their victory, noting that they should enjoy their spoils as well as sell the vault key back to Tanis. After all, with the vault open and the Destroyer killed, it's of no use to anyone anymore. While opening the vault may not have provided the Vault Hunters with riches beyond imagination, it did make them relatively well known, at least on Pandora. This warranted a local entrepreneur by the name of Mad Moxie to invite the Vault Hunters to participate in her Underdome Coliseum. There, the Vault Hunters would compete for the grand prize of marrying Moxie herself, and while they were victorious, this never came to fruition. However, the Vault Hunters would learn that the true prize was not marrying Moxie, but instead gaining her respect, which, quite honestly, is a lot more difficult. While the Vault Hunters were enjoying their newfound popularity, Atlas was finally beginning to crumble under the weight of their failures. Things that were once considered to be relatively minor problems had now compounded into issues they could no longer control. Problems such as the military being run by a literal child due to the culture of nepotism within the company. This in turn led to the disillusionment of people such as General Knox, who hadn't been truly proud of his work at Atlas for some time. The final straw was the failure of Commandant Steele, who even with the power of Atlas at her disposal, lost a vault to a bunch of nobodies. This downward trend would be absolutely devastating for Atlas, though for its adversaries, it would only help to inspire them further. And there's nobody more adversarial to Atlas than Athena. As with all Crimson Assassins, Athena was stolen from her family at a young age and forced to kill them to cut any ties to her past life. This would have worked if it had not been for her sister's survival. As she grew up, she would search for evidence of her sister's whereabouts using the skills she had been taught as an assassin. Despite this, she would continue to be a loyal soldier, even reporting her findings to her direct superior, General Knox. With enough time, Athena was able to find and reunite with her sister, though this wouldn't last long, as she would confess to Knox that with her sister found, she wanted to leave the Crimson Assassins. General Knox actually found this to be somewhat inspiring, a story of a soldier who had given it their all and was ready to move on to the next chapter of their life, something that he wanted to experience for himself. However, he made the mistake of revealing this information to Atlas executives who did not find it to be as heartfelt as Knox would imply. They saw it as one of their finest soldiers admitting their treasonous intent, something that they sought to rectify. They would then order the Crimson Assassins, including Athena, to massacre the village home to Athena's sister. After the operation was complete, Athena would learn the truth, and with that same passion that drove her to find her sister, she devoted her life to killing anyone who was proudly associated with Atlas. So when word got out that Atlas was beginning to crumble, she took the opportunity to reach out to those who she saw were responsible for it. After answering Athena's call, the Vault Hunters arrive at T-Bone Junction. Athena then directs them to speak with Scooter, who can help them find her. Scooter has them collect some nearby parts in order to construct a new vehicle, which will help them destroy the many literal Atlas roadblocks they are bound to encounter. After constructing the vehicle, the Vault Hunters are sent to Moxie's Red Light, a club that overlooks her Underdome. There, they are supposed to meet with Athena. However, when they arrive, Moxie informs them that her ex-husband Shank had taken Athena, looking to cash in the bounty that's on her head. After accessing a prison that Shank and his crew had overrun, they kill Shank, which gives them access to a teleporter as well as Athena. The Vault Hunters give Athena the teleporter and reunite with her at T-Bone Junction. There, she lays out the plan to drive the final nail in the coffin for Atlas, to destroy General Knox's massive weapons depot. To do this, they must find some way to detonate the powerful bombs already within the depot. However, to do that, they must also find an access code to get inside. While the Vault Hunters find the access code, Athena focuses on finding the detonator. After doing so, she hands the detonator off to the Vault Hunters and sends them to infiltrate the armory. Once inside, they are confronted by General Knox himself. He immediately begins the confrontation by showing off his impressive arsenal of weaponry before stowing it away. It's clear that he knows what's about to happen, and he's not all that surprised. After all, the writing has been on the wall for some time, so even if he did best them, what would he do? Would Atlas even let someone with his capabilities and knowledge live? He assumed not. But much more than that, is that this may be his only chance he'll have to end his life in a way that he had always imagined, by giving it his all. No tricks, no advantages. just him versus a capable opponent. After a long fight, the Vault Hunters manage to kill General Knox and infiltrate his armory. There, they enter the codes that they had acquired and grab anything of value before the place is blown sky high. This would be the final devastating blow in a series of critical failures that plagued the Atlas Corporation, as it's after this moment that they would be reduced to nothing more than a passing memory in the minds of the people. Much like Atlas did to Dahl, Hyperion was quick to push the remaining Atlas forces into hiding as they laid claim to the planet. This was likely the direct result of Jack's manipulation within the company, the same manipulation that gave him an unusual amount of authority and control over a soon-to-be constructed Hyperion space station named Helios. With this responsibility, Jack, even though he was a mid-level programmer, had positioned himself exactly where he needed to be, as he could now carry out his plan of harvesting the power of the Destroyer. With Hyperion's influence over Pandora just beginning, they would hire the esteemed Vault Hunters to take on a new threat that had emerged. A growing rebellion of Claptrap units led by none other than the Claptrap, who had gone rogue after Hyperion's interplanetary ninja assassin Claptrap protocol, which was meant to take out the Vault Hunters, backfired, causing Claptrap to rally all other Claptrap units in a fight against their oppressors. This call for the Vault Hunters' help would come from a man named Mr. Blake, an executive at Hyperion. He would task the Vault Hunters with traveling around Tartarus Station to restore and or cripple key systems that Claptrap's rebels had overrun, along the way fighting people Claptrap had reanimated, such as Commandant Steele and General Knox. In the end, the Vault Hunters confront Claptrap and defeat him, in doing so restoring his original programming. In the months following the opening of the vault, a massive scar would emerge on Pandora's crust, revealing the immense amount of iridium that lay deep below the planet's surface. This immediately caught the attention of Hyperion, who would then fortify their already established position on Pandora to begin mining operations. Meanwhile, Jack would continue to oversee the construction of Helios, a position which gave him a large amount of flexibility. At first, this would manifest in minor ways, like the change of color scheme from the classic Hyperion red and black to a brighter yellow and black. But as time passed, he would begin to use this unchecked freedom for the development of a few much larger projects. First of which would be the Eye of Helios, a powerful superweapon that uses the Destroyer's eye enhanced with iridium to shoot a beam of energy at any point on Pandora or Elpis's surface. His next project would be the Frag Trap, which was Claptrap, who, with the assistance of Angel, Jack would outfit with weaponry to do his bidding. Last but not least, Jack would start a doppelganger program that would have individuals getting paid a handsome sum of money to take on his likeness. A brief glimpse at the wild extent Jack would go to satiate his ego. A few years after the vault had been opened, Hyperion would find itself spread across every inch of Pandora. Similar to Hyperion, Jack had been experiencing his own growth, as it was during this time that he discovered Elpis possessed a vault of its own, sparking a keen desire to claim it for himself. Meanwhile, on Elpis, Colonel Zarpedon had found herself the commander of a group of Dahl defectors named the Lost Legion. With her knowledge of what's to come, she had been preparing for Hyperion's arrival for some time, and now, with Helios near completion, she was going to use it to destroy Elpis. To help find the vault on Elpis, Jack would hire a handful of Vault Hunters. These include Nisha, a skilled sharpshooter, Wilhelm, Hyperion's greatest enforcer, Aurelia Hammerlock, a cold-hearted killer, Frag Trap, Jack's very own abomination, Timothy Lawrence, Jack's doppelganger, and Athena, who after hunting Atlas non-stop, couldn't turn down the opportunity to hunt down a vault and get paid for it. One by one, the Vault Hunters would make their way onto a rocket on Pandora that Jack had arranged to transport them. But as the rocket approached Helios, they would be ambushed by the Lost Legion, who had finally begun their invasion of Helios. The rocket then crashed, leaving the Vault Hunters stranded on Helios with no clear escape. After waking up, the Vault Hunters are greeted by a Claptrap unit that hands them their standard issue Echo device before escorting them to Jack. There, they find Jack pinned down by the Lost Legion, who they promptly kill. After helping him to his feet, Jack attempts to activate Helios' defenses, which ultimately fails due to a jamming signal on Elpis. This prompts Jack and the Vault Hunters to escape Helios altogether. They first attempt to leave via the escape pods, but are halted by Zarpedon and the Watcher. They then travel to Helios' moonshot cannon, where Jack opts to stay aboard Helios, while the Vault Hunters are shot down near Concordia, Elpis' biggest city. Upon impact, a local mechanic named Janie Springs helps the Vault Hunters get equipped for Elpis' environment by assisting them in making an Oz kit. Afterwards, they take down a scav named Deadlift, then travel to Concordia. There, they are instructed by Jack to talk to the Marif, the mayor/sheriff of the town, so he can help them disable the signal jammer. However, the Marif disables his elevator. Jack gets frustrated, then directs the Vault Hunters to go to the Up and Over bar, yet another of Moxie's many establishments. There they meet with Roland and Lilith, who decline to help, though it wouldn't be long until they had no choice but to interfere, as they could see straight through Jack's heroic facade. Soon enough, Moxie ends up assisting the Vault Hunters by helping them obtain and set up transmitters that can triangulate the jamming signal. After placing down a few of them, the Vault Hunters are able to pinpoint that the signal is coming from an old doll facility at Crisis Scar. Immediately after leaving the city, the Vault Hunters see the Eye of Helios in action as its powerful laser is aimed at the heart of Elpis. Jack notes that the moon can't take much more of that, so they need to hurry up and destroy the jamming signal. After doing so, Helios' systems come online, and the Marif unknowingly reveals his association with the Lost Legion. Jack, now possessing the ability to fast travel, asks the Vault Hunters to meet him in Concordia so they can have a little chat with the Marif. In Concordia, Jack, with the help of the Customs Claptrap unit, gets access to the mayor's office by revealing his unsavory relations with another robot. Once inside, the Vault Hunters, Jack, and the Customs Claptrap fight the Marif's guard of scavs before finally confronting him. The Marif of course begs for his life, noting that Zarpedon made him do it. Jack is begrudgingly willing to let him go, but after the Marif opens fire, Jack doesn't hesitate to shoot back. With the Marif out of the way, Jack notes that to take back Helios, they will need an army. And what better army than one that is absolutely disposable and follows his every order. But to create an army of robots, they will need a few things. First is a top-of-the-line military AI, which the Vault Hunters learn is located in a crashed doll warship called the Drakensberg. A few detours later, the Vault Hunters are able to access the Drakensberg and kill the bosun, thanks to the assistance of someone named Skipper, who they learn is the high-grade military AI they have been searching for, and that their real name is Felicity. Lilith and Roland, who at this point are helping Jack to gain his trust, then inform the Vault Hunters of a doll production facility that they can use to produce the army Jack needs. The Vault Hunters infiltrate the facility where they find a Hyperion engineer named Gladstone. He says he's been working on a top-of-the-line constructor bot capable of destructing loader bots at an unprecedented scale. However, he stopped its production once the facility was overrun, but since Jack and the Vault Hunters need it to save the moon, he decides that there's no better time to finish it. Once all the parts are installed, the final step becomes installing the AI. Felicity is hesitant to do so, seeing as they will be forever stripped of their agency, but with no other options and the moon on the line, they are installed into the constructor bot. Felicity's hesitation leads the constructor bot to run rampant, but after stripping it of its offensive capabilities, Felicity has no choice but to comply. With an endless army of loader bots at their side, Jack and the Vault Hunters, including Lilith and Roland, begin their assault on Helios. Their plan is to retake the Eye as fast as possible. However, the fast travel splits them up, causing a bit of a delay. After helping Jack to his office, the Vault Hunters would overhear Gladstone inform Jack that his colleagues were in danger. Rather than letting them die, Jack decides to send the Vault Hunters to save them. It's at that time that the CEO of Hyperion, Mr. Tassiter, who had been observing Jack this whole time, would attempt to ratify Jack's termination from the company. However, the board would soon come to learn of Jack's accomplishments and ambition, so instead of firing him, they would endorse his behavior and begin to turn on Mr. Tassiter. Once the Vault Hunters rescued the scientists, Gladstone would notify Jack that it was possible one of his scientist colleagues was working with the Lost Legion. Jack, taking no chances and letting his paranoia get the best of him, launches the scientists, including Gladstone, out of the airlock. This cements Jack's lunacy in the minds of Roland, Lilith, and Moxie, who continue to work with him, if only to sabotage his plans. With the Lost Legion's defenses down, Jack, Moxie, Lilith, Roland, and the Vault Hunters make their way to the Eye of Helios. Along the way, they encounter Zarpedon for the final time. After her defeat, she tells Jack that he may have won this time, but that his fall is destined to happen. With her final breaths, she begs Jack to forget about the vault, that if he sees what's inside, it will begin a chain of events that ends in the death of more than just Elpis or Pandora. But Jack, transfixed on what lies inside the vault, pays no attention to this warning. He shoots Zarpedon without hesitation, and moves on to retake the Eye of Helios with the help of the Vault Hunters. At the Eye of Helios, the Vault Hunters learn the true origins of its power, that it comes from the eye of the Destroyer, though it's enhanced using something called slag, a byproduct of the Iridium refinement process. To stop Elpis' destruction, Moxie leads the Vault Hunters through the process of shutting down the eye. However, as she, Roland, and Lilith had carefully planned, the reboot sequence ends in the creation of a singularity that swallows the eye of the Destroyer. With its destruction came an unraveling of Jack's psyche, an unrelenting rage that he had not felt since the death of his wife. Years of planning and preparation went into the creation of the Eye of Helios, and now with it gone, he had to see what was inside the vault. With that, a race to the vault ensues, with Jack using cloaking technology to follow the Vault Hunters through the vault's massive underground structure. In the end, the Vault Hunters enter the heart of Elpis and confront the Sentinel who guards the vault's riches. A lengthy battle ensues, with the Sentinel using everything in its power to stop the Vault Hunters from obtaining its treasure. But eventually, the Sentinel is bested, and the treasure it guards is revealed. A simple glyph that, when interacted with by Jack, reveals the future. However, this future is cut short when the Watcher sends Lilith inside the vault to stop Jack from learning too much. Lilith uses her power to destroy the glyph, which forever brands Jack's face with the mark of the vault. In a burning rage, Jack declares nothing short of the total annihilation of bandits on Pandora. When Jack returns to Helios, he does so with a new look and a renewed determination. He walks into his office, where he finds Mr. Tacitor at his desk. Without hesitation, he strangles Tacitor to death, declaring himself Handsome Jack, CEO of Hyperion. Soon after his takeover of Hyperion, Handsome Jack would use his newfound status to do some research into Hyperion's systems. While doing so, he would learn that the Claptrap unit he and Angel had modified was in possession of a device called the H-Source, a massive collection of Hyperion secrets and security information that he would very much like to have access to as CEO. To accomplish this, he sends the Vault Hunters into a simulation of Claptrap's mind by digitizing them. Inside the simulation, they obtain the admin password and head to the system admin. There, the admin password is revoked due to some safeguards put in place by Tacitor. This leads the Vault Hunters to search for the H-Source manually by going into a simulation of Pandora inside Claptrap's memories. Eventually, the Vault Hunters find the H-Source inside of a recreation of the Destroyer's vault after it had been pillaged by Jack. They attempt to download the information, however, Tacitor's safeguards once again activate, transporting the H-Source to a section of Claptrap's code called Quarantine. However, they are once again blocked, this time by a darker version of Claptrap called Shadow Trap. Shadow Trap informs them that if they want access to Quarantine, they will need something called the Override Key, which would give them free access to everything inside Claptrap's systems. This override key is once again hidden deep inside Claptrap's memories, though unlike the last, these were false memories, history that had been masked in layers of denial. As the Vault Hunters unravel the truth buried within Claptrap's psyche, they eventually confront his denial and obtain the override key. After taking it back to Quarantine, Shadow Trap uses the override key to free himself and escape to Claptrap's subconscious with the H-Source. As the Vault Hunters chase him, they discover the Shadow Trap's intentions are to merge with Claptrap and the H-Source to take revenge on those who have caused them harm. As they confront Shadowtrap in the deepest parts of Claptrap's code, the Vault Hunters are finally able to obtain the H-Source, but upon returning it to Handsome Jack, Shadowtrap reveals that they are still inside the simulation, and instead of handing it to Handsome Jack, they've handed it right back to him. Shadowtrap then attempts to merge with Claptrap, but Claptrap refuses, making Shadowtrap resort to using the H-Source himself to destroy the Vault Hunters. After a lengthy fight, the Vault Hunters come out on top and return the H-Source to Handsome Jack. For real this time. With the H-Source, Handsome Jack's first act is something that he had been dreaming about for years: to destroy every last Claptrap unit. He activates a kill code that instantaneously destroys every Claptrap unit connected to the Hyperion network. Of course, except for the Claptrap, who Handsome Jack elects to execute himself. Following the purge of the Claptrap units, Jack would have most disposed of in landfills across both Pandora and Elpis. One such landfill was the Windshear Waste on Pandora. There, a huge mass of Claptrap units were left to decay in the harsh environment, though one such unit, that being Claptrap himself, would survive thanks to the efforts of Sir Alistair Hammerlock. After obtaining the H-Source, Handsome Jack would use his unprecedented power to quite literally change the face of Hyperion. To be exact, he would change it to resemble his face, as his identity would quickly become synonymous with Hyperion as a whole. While some of the Vault Hunters like Nisha and Wilhelm thrived in this environment, others, like Athena, would come to realize that living under the shadow of Handsome Jack meant your life was in service to him. She had already seen how this kind of leadership turned out for Atlas, and she wasn't too keen on reliving it. Over the next few years, Hyperion would focus much of its efforts on pursuing anything Handsome Jack deemed to be important. It's no surprise that this meant some of these endeavors were simply there to once again fuel his ego. Endeavors such as, but not limited to, Opportunity, a Handsome Jack-centric, unsurprisingly dystopian, utopian city on Pandora. The Handsome Jackpot, a space casino overlooking a black hole, an idea that he had stole from Moxie when they had dated. This was also where Timothy was sent, as Jack felt it was good branding to have the employees of the casino resemble himself. And finally, the last of these projects would be Handsome Jack's purchase of the once powerful Atlas Corporation. Alongside these vanity projects, Hyperion would begin to pour its resources toward Jack's main venture, the awakening of the warrior. To accomplish this, he would steal the vault key from Tanis and begin a mass extraction of Iridium from Pandora. This gave Hyperion incredible leverage over other companies, as they alone controlled the market of Iridium, making them wildly profitable. But aside from profit, the Iridium mining had a secondary goal, one that was much more sinister. Knowing Sirens possess enhanced abilities when interacting with Iridium, Jack sought to administer a constant supply of it to Angel's body, further enhancing her abilities as well as expediting the Vault Key's charging process. This would initially be tested aboard a prototype within Helios, but Jack's paranoia would eventually lead him to construct a much more secure facility on Pandora known simply as Control Core Angel. To guard this facility, he had Hyperion engineers design a state-of-the-art automated sentry ship named BNK-3R, also known as the Bunker. The Iridium infusion process had also led to vast amounts of Iridium runoff, which had been named slag, lying around in barrels to be disposed of. Handsome Jack decided to put this slag to use by constructing the Wildlife Exploitation Preserve, a facility that would test the effects of Iridium and slag on a wide array of living subjects. As Angel was charging the Vault Key, Handsome Jack would begin to go on the offensive to keep bandits and Vault Hunters alike from ruining his plans. This began with the mass production of constructor bots, which in turn led to an outpour of loader bots on Pandora. This kept the bandits and Vault Hunters busy, but Jack knew that it wasn't going to be enough. Meanwhile, in New Haven, Roland decided that he had had enough of Hyperion. With the help of his fellow Vault Hunters, he would rally the scattered Crimson Lance forces who had been abandoned since Atlas's purchase. He couldn't promise them a guaranteed victory or personal glory, but what he could say was that this time, they were fighting on the right side of history. With that, the Crimson Raiders were formed, those who would fight until the very end against the tyranny of Hyperion. Shortly after the formation of the Crimson Raiders, Handsome Jack would order Nisha and Wilhelm to wipe out the residents of New Haven. This was successful, and those remaining were forced to flee to the doll mining ship known as Sanctuary. Following the fall of New Haven, Jack would gift Nisha the town of Lynchwood, where she would become the sheriff. Wilhelm would be further outfitted with robotic weaponry until he would become unrecognizable from his past self. Meanwhile, in Sanctuary, Roland and Lilith would continue to bolster the Crimson Raiders, recruiting people such as Tanis, Marcus, Dr. Zed, Scooter, Crazy Earl, and Moxie. Brick at this time would be removed from the Crimson Raiders, as his savage outbursts were proving to make things difficult for Roland. However, this wouldn't keep Brick from finding his own way to fight against Hyperion, as soon enough, he would create his own bandit camp known as the Slab Gang, crowning himself the Slab King. After exiling Brick, Roland would begin a non-stop search for a way to take down Handsome Jack. To assist him, Mordecai would spy on Hyperion from afar, while Lilith would begin to hunt down bandits under the codename Firehawk. This would keep Roland informed, as well as keep the heat off the Crimson Raiders, who, day by day, were becoming increasingly desperate. With the Crimson Raiders forced into hiding, Handsome Jack decided that it wasn't enough to keep Vault Hunters away from Pandora, because then they might conclude he was hiding something. So instead, he concocted a clever plan to take control of the situation by luring Vault Hunters to Pandora, where they would then permanently disappear. For this, a series of advertisements were created to promote the idea that Pandora continued to be a thriving playground for Vault Hunters. This proved to be effective, as over the coming months, Vault Hunters would die left and right at the hands of Handsome Jack. That is, until an unlikely group of 6 outcasts would survive one of these attacks, instantly garnering them legendary status as the Vault Hunters who faced Handsome Jack and lived. In his many years as a doll soldier, Axton often found himself in troubled waters as his tendency to seek personal glory would frequently come at the cost of his orders. This eventually reached a boiling point that had Doll plan a firing squad to execute Axton for his insubordination. Thankfully, his wife, who was also his commanding officer at the time, would warn him of his impending death. Axton would then go AWOL, afterwards traveling to the lawless wasteland of Pandora in search of the glory he felt was his destiny. There, he became a bounty hunter, which didn't exactly give him the status he was seeking. However, one day, while turning in a bounty, he would see Hyperion's advertisements, promising absolute fame to anyone who helped them find a vault. With that, he traveled to the Invitation's meeting spot, a maglev train that he knew would change his life. He just didn't quite know how. After being delivered to the Order of Impending Storm on Athenas, Maya would be secluded from the public for years. In this time, the monks would teach her how to use her powers, which she optimistically assumed was for her own safety. Though, even after the monks revealed her to the public, she had no idea that her entire life, she was being trained to become the Order's greatest weapon. Not just physically, but also politically, as her reveal was a strategic decision, a way to control the masses by declaring her their savior. This kept the citizens of Athena subservient to the Order for years to come. In this time, Maya would begin researching her Siren heritage, where she learned of a strange connection between Sirens, Eridium, and the Vaults. This, either caused by or in tandem with the calling she felt of Pandora, made her begin to dream of a life outside Athenas. Soon enough, she would get her opportunity to leave when she was ordered to partake in a public execution. She, of course, refused, now understanding that her role on Athenas was that of a weapon for the Order. Without hesitation, she left Athenas, where she would then follow her calling to search for a vault on Pandora. This would eventually lead to her acceptance of Handsome Jack's vault hunting invitation. However, just before boarding that fateful maglev train, she would come into contact with a psycho by the name of Krieg. Krieg wasn't always a psycho. In fact, he was once a loving husband and father, despite his work as a mercenary. However, that would all change when he stumbled upon one of Hyperion's many research facilities where he was abducted, becoming another one of Hyperion's test subjects. The lab director, Dr. Benedict, was developing an experimental drug designed to augment and enhance soldiers. Unfortunately, while the drug did induce the desired fearless aggression, it also triggered a deep psychosis, twisting subjects into violent, gibbering, indiscriminate killers. Krieg, however, somehow resisted the gas's effects, and when Dr. Benedict ordered him to kill off his fellow test subjects, an unrelenting internal struggle split his subconscious in two. From then on, the rational and sane side of Krieg would struggle to control the murderous desire of the psychotic side of his mind. Eventually, Krieg managed to break out of his captivity, kill Dr. Benedict, and escape to the Pandoran wasteland. There, he wandered the planet as a psycho, his sanity taking a back seat, though they could both agree that harming the innocent was out of the question. Sometime later, Krieg would stumble upon the very train station where the other Vault Hunters were planning to meet, and that's when he laid his eyes upon Maya. At first, Maya assumed Krieg to be hostile and fired at him. As she did, a pack of rats snuck up behind her. Krieg, after battling his psychotic urges, attacked them to protect her. In that moment, Maya saw something inside Krieg, a fractured soul who would likely struggle to be good for as long as he lived. But it was in that struggle that she saw strength, enough that she would place her trust in him by not killing him. As Maya boarded the train, Krieg would latch onto the back of it, vowing to follow that feeling of love that he had not felt in a long, long time. On the far-off moon known as Eden 5, a young girl by the name of Gage would use her incredible intellect to develop a robot for an upcoming school science fair. Known as Death Trap, or simply DT, it was designed to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. As she developed it, she would find it necessary to replace her left arm with a mechanical prosthetic that would house all the Digistruct data necessary for DT's operations. Around that time is when her arch-rival Marcy would steal her idea and develop the Crime Buster bots, which were meant to assist law enforcement. Gage was furious, and it was in that fury that Death Trap would accidentally kill Marcy, forcing Gage to abandon Eden 5 by sneaking aboard a shuttle bound for Pandora. At that point, she wasn't exactly sure what she was going to do, but seeing as she had always been interested in Pandora, she decided that she and DT would try their hand at vault hunting. In the unruly town of Ojeva, Pandora, a gun-loving Pandoran named Salvador would often run rampant, terrorizing local bandit camps. This satisfied his trigger finger, though it also made the citizens of Ojeva nervous, as his chaotic outbursts often led to a great deal of collateral damage. To solve this problem, the town sentenced Salvador to death by hanging. Luckily, Hyperion would cut his execution short by beginning a raid on the town on the day of his hanging. Salvador was able to kill the Hyperion soldiers, and in doing so, learned of the vault, which he knew was a goal that would have no shortage of bandits to kill. Soon enough, he too would make his way to the train, where his vault hunting journey would begin. Almost nothing is known about the assassin named Zero. His appearance seems to suggest that he isn't human, though past that, his origins are a complete mystery. Similarly, there's no clear evidence of his life before he stepped foot on Pandora, though we do know the reason behind it. To Zero, Pandora was a means of finding a challenge, one of the only things that we know that drives him. After searching Pandora for some time, he would eventually learn of the vault, which he would finally decide was a challenge worthy of his time. Like the others, he would board a certain maglev train with no idea that in just a few short minutes, all of their lives would forever change.
Welcome to Pandora, kiddos.
After waking up in the Windshear Wastes, the Vault Hunters are greeted by Claptrap, who joyously notes that they will be his ticket off this barren glacier. He then gives them each an echo device and escorts them to his nearby hideout. On the way, the Vault Hunters are contacted by Angel, who tells them that they have survived for a reason and that she is there to help them. In his hideout, Claptrap's eye is stolen by a bullymong named a Knuckle Dragger. After chasing it down and killing it, they help escort Claptrap to Liarsburg, where Handsome Jack offers a $1 million bounty to anyone who can kill the Vault Hunters. This gets the attention of Captain Flint, a nearby bandit who has possession of Claptrap's ship. After clearing Liarsburg of bandits, the Vault Hunters meet with Sir Alistair Hammerlock, who quickly repairs Claptrap's eye. They then make their way to Captain Flint, defeat him, retrieve Claptrap's ship, and travel to Three Horns Divide in search of Sanctuary. When they eventually arrive at Sanctuary's entrance, they are contacted by Roland, who informs them that to get into Sanctuary, they must first find a power core that was supposed to be picked up by a man named Corporal Reese. After finding Corporal Reese and hunting down the attackers that stole his power core, they eventually are granted access into Sanctuary. This leads them to immediately learn that Roland has gone missing despite his recent transmissions. Angel informs them that they should meet up with the residents of Sanctuary to find out what happened to Roland. The first person they meet is Scooter, who reveals that in event of his disappearance, Roland ordered Scooter to execute Plan B, which would have him activate Sanctuary's long dormant flight systems to get the town to safety. The Vault Hunters help Scooter set the system up, however it's proven ineffective. The plan then becomes to find Roland, who seems to have been captured by a mysterious bounty hunter known as the Firehawk, who resides in Frostburn Canyon. After fighting their way through Frostburn Canyon, the Vault Hunters learn that the Firehawk is none other than the famous Vault Hunter Lilith. After helping her to her feet and giving her a small pick-me-up in the form of an Iridium shard, she reveals that Roland was taken by the nearby Bloodshot gang. After a long detour involving finding a new vehicle, they finally make their way inside the Bloodshot stronghold. They then find their way into the heart of the stronghold, which finally puts them face to face with Roland. Unfortunately, this is followed by Roland being abducted yet again, this time by a constructor bot under the directive of Handsome Jack. After fighting their way through an army of loader bots, the Vault Hunters save Roland. In Sanctuary, Roland explains that Jack isn't actually after the riches of the vault. He's after a creature that's inside it, a warrior of the Eridians with the capability to destroy everything on Pandora. To keep Handsome Jack from opening the vault, Roland has the Vault Hunters meet with a spy of his out in Tundra Express. Once arrived, they signal the spy by lighting a few Varkids on fire, which reveals the spy to be the legendary sharpshooter Mordecai and his trusty partner Bloodwing. Mordecai says that if his intel is correct, a Hyperion train holding a vault key should be passing nearby fairly soon. All they gotta do is hijack it. Roland says that this can be done with the help of a friend of his, a girl named Tiny Tina, an expert in anything that goes boom. After gathering some supplies for Tina, the Vault Hunters derail the train. They then explore the train wreck where they find Wilhelm. Both Angel and Roland reason that Wilhelm's presence must mean the train does indeed hold the vault key. After Wilhelm's defeat, the Vault Hunters notice a distinct lack of a key, though what they find is that he was in possession of a power core. Angel is adamant that this power core is very important, while Roland notes that it looks a little strange. Though, given the last power core the Vault Hunters retrieved was only partially charged, Roland makes the rash decision to use the new power core to keep Sanctuary shielded. With the power core plugged in, Angel is given full access to Sanctuary's systems. Jack immediately orders her to lower Sanctuary's shields, revealing their alliance to the Vault Hunters. With the shields down and Helios' full attention on Sanctuary, the Vault Hunters look to Roland for leadership. He tells them to take the Iridium he has stashed over to Lilith, who, powered by the Iridium, jumpstarts Sanctuary's flight systems. After being teleported to the ground, the Vault Hunters witness an incredible sight as Sanctuary takes flight for the first time in decades. Once in the air, Lilith phases the entirety of Sanctuary out of Helios' range. From here, the Vault Hunters head to the Highlands, where they see Sanctuary reappear. This, however, caused some issues with the ship's fast travel network, which Angel says she can help them solve. At this point, she knows it's not in their interest to trust her, seeing as they just betrayed them, but she claims that she had no choice, and that she can make it up to them by helping them take down Handsome Jack like she promised when they first met. She then points them to the Iridium extraction plant, where the Vault Hunters find a lunar supply beacon that they set up in the town of Overlook. Angel then transmits a request for a new fast travel station that she can calibrate to Sanctuary. After defending the beacon for a long time, Angel's request for an uncalibrated fast travel station is fulfilled. Once aboard Sanctuary, the Vault Hunters immediately regroup with Roland and Lilith, where they begin to discuss finding the vault key. Angel interjects, saying that she can help them. Both Roland and Lilith are apprehensive, seeing as she lied to them as well, until Angel states that she has the vault key. She then goes on to say that she's housed inside of a Hyperion facility atop 1,000 Cuts, but that if they want to get to her, they must first clear 3 impassable security hurdles. The first is a deterrence field that will obliterate any non-Hyperion personnel that pass through it. The second is a bunker outfitted with state-of-the-art weaponry meant to withstand almost anything. Last but not least is a simple door that can only be opened by Handsome Jack. Before leaving, she notes that once they somehow accomplish these goals, they must promise her one thing. They cannot, under any circumstances, allow Lilith to enter her chambers. Once Angel leaves, Roland sends the Vault Hunters to the Wildlife Exploitation Preserve to both get an upgrade for Claptrap, which should allow them to pass the force field, and assist Mordecai. At the preserve, the Vault Hunters meet with Mordecai, who states that the Claptrap software upgrade they were looking for was stored somewhere inside Bloodwing's collar. Unfortunately, Hyperion soldiers stole her when she and Mordecai were doing some recon out in Tundra Express. With Mordecai assisting them, the Vault Hunters infiltrate the preserve to both find Bloodwing and recover the upgrade. After traveling to the observation wing, Jack reveals that he had not only taken Bloodwing, but that he had changed her, experimented on her with Eridium until she became something else entirely. With no choice, the Vault Hunters fight and eventually cripple this twisted version of Bloodwing. Once at her breaking point, Mordecai tells the Vault Hunters to retrieve the data from her collar, then get back to Sanctuary, where they might find a way to save her. However, upon removing the microchip, a timed explosive within her collar is triggered, killing Bloodwing for good. Back at Sanctuary, the Vault Hunters deliver the upgrade to Claptrap, allowing him to pass through and disable the first security hurdle. Roland then invites the Vault Hunters into the HQ, where he and Lilith talk fondly of Bloodwing before moving on to discuss the second part of their plan. To help pass this supposedly impenetrable bunker, Roland asks the Vault Hunters to deliver a note to a former Crimson Raider known as the Slab King, who resides out in Thousand Cuts. Once in Thousand Cuts, the Vault Hunters fight through the Slab King's army of slabs, taking a quick detour to kill a strange psycho with a desire to be shot in the face. Afterwards, they are told that they can't meet the Slab King until they survive some sort of initiation. They do so, which the Slab King remarks is awesome, as he reveals himself to be Brick. The Vault Hunters then deliver Roland's note, which is revealed to be an IOU that Brick had given Roland sometime in the past. Brick then says that he can assist them by lending them some of his buzzards, which Roland notes should make the raid on the bunker much easier. Once at Sanctuary, the Vault Hunters find Roland and Brick rekindling their friendship before discussing how to pass the final hurdle. Angel butts in, saying that to get through the final door to her control core, they will need to be Handsome Jack, which means passing a bioscan and speaking a passphrase in his voice. Luckily, they can get their hands on a few body doubles of Jack in his utopian city of Opportunity. At Opportunity, the Vault Hunters hunt down one of Jack's body doubles to acquire his pocket watch, which Jack had programmed to relay his biosignature to all nearby machines. This effectively allowed him to be in two places at once, which was useful for a number of diplomatic reasons. The Vault Hunters then travel around Opportunity gathering audio samples of Jack's voice, which they then use to synthesize a voice modulator, allowing the Vault Hunters to speak exactly like Handsome Jack. Angel then begins to scream out in pain as Jack forces her to cut her connection to the Vault Hunters. Back at Sanctuary, Roland gathers the Crimson Raiders for the final assault for the Vault Key, which everyone assumes to be nearly impossible. Despite this, Roland knows it's their only option, as the fate of the world is at stake if they can't get to this key. After the meeting, the Vault Hunters meet with Claptrap and travel to Thousand Cuts. There, Claptrap disables the deterrent field using his upgrade, and the Vault Hunters fight their way through an army of Hyperion forces until they reach the bunker. Only, Jack reveals that the bunker is not a place. It's a thing. A highly advanced, top-of-the-line combat drone that, as far as Jack is concerned, is unstoppable. With the bunker out of the way, the Vault Hunters travel down to the control core's security door, where they use the pocket watch to pass the bioscan. They then use their voice modulators to speak Jack's passphrase, which Angel tells them is simply, "I love you." The door opens, and Jack is swift to threaten every person he can think of to keep them from moving forward. But with the world on the line, they press on. As they descend into Angel's chambers, she reveals that Eridium alone is unable to charge the Vault Key. What it really needs is a catalyst, a Siren which Jack had kept hidden from the world for years. But that time is at an end. The Vault Hunters were going to free her and end her suffering. As they enter the control core, Angel reveals herself to be Jack's Siren and tells the Vault Hunters that if they want to stop Jack's plan, they can't just take the key. They have to destroy his catalyst. Suddenly, Jack traps Angel once again, forcing her to continue charging the key. Angel tells the Vault Hunters to destroy the Iridium injectors above her cell, but before they can do so, Jack shields them. Roland then joins them to help disable the shields around the injectors, and one by one, he drops the shields so the Vault Hunters can take them out. Upon destroying the final injector, Angel screams out in pain as the Iridium withdrawals instantly put her in a terminal state. And it's in this state that with her dying words, she calls her deranged father and near lifelong captor an asshole. Immediately following Angel's death, Tannis would inherit her Siren powers. It's unclear why exactly, or even if Angel chose her, but regardless, Tannis would keep her inheritance a secret for nearly a decade, quietly mastering her abilities that she would vow to use for the greater good. With the vault key at their feet and Angel out of the equation, Roland and Lilith begin to talk about the next step of taking Handsome Jack down. Just then, Jack teleports behind Roland and puts a single shot in his back. Lilith screams and begins to attack Jack, but not before he throws a control collar on her. He then warns the Vault Hunters that with Angel gone, he has nothing else to lose, but that he will gladly show them just how much they have to lose. He then orders Lilith to kill the Vault Hunters, and with great effort, she manages to teleport the Vault Hunters to Sanctuary. With both Roland and Lilith gone, Mordecai suddenly finds himself as the highest ranked Crimson Raider. With that, he tells the Vault Hunters that their goal is now to simply find the Vault of the Warrior before Jack can open it, and the only place with that kind of information is the Hyperion Information Stockade in Arid Nexus. After a quick detour to Sawtooth Canyon, the Vault Hunters gain access to Arid Nexus, where Mordecai notes that to enter the stockade, they must first punch a hole in the pipeline. The Vault Hunters do so by overloading the pump stations to build up pressure, then ramming the pipeline with a vehicle. This gives them a clear path through the pipe and into the stockade, where they steal the location of the vault. After returning to Sanctuary, Mordecai tells the Vault Hunters that with the vault's location in hand, there's no time to waste. They must get Claptrap to help infiltrate Heroes Pass, then kill Handsome Jack before he can gain control of the Warrior. After recruiting Claptrap, the Vault Hunters travel to Iridium Blight, where they defend him as he opens the door into Heroes Pass. After staving off an entire army of loader bots, Claptrap triumphantly opens the door, only to find stairs blocking him from entering. Alongside Brick and Mordecai, the Vault Hunters fight their way through hundreds of Hyperion forces, eventually gaining access to the heart of the volcano, where the Vault of the Warrior resides. Upon approaching the vault, Lilith is seen unwillingly charging the final bit of energy needed to complete Jack's grand plan, to cleanse Pandora of the bandits who killed his wife, and the ones that, as he sees it, also killed his daughter. Jack then begins to kill the Vault Hunters for all the pain that they have caused him, for almost ruining his plan. Why couldn't they see that he was going to change the world, make it a safer, more civilized place, one where his wife and daughter could have lived long lives, one where he would have been seen as the hero? The Vault Hunters are able to oppose Jack's assault, bringing him to the brink of death. However, as he stood bloody and broken, the key finally finished charging. Without hesitation, Jack put up a shield, allowing him to insert the key into the vault's lock uninterrupted. The ground beneath them began to rumble as the Warrior awoke from its millennia-long slumber, ready to take action against anyone who Jack deemed to be a threat. With this, a lengthy battle ensued between a being meant to destroy civilizations and 6 outcasts who just so happened to find their way onto the same train. With time, the Vault Hunters were triumphant in defeating the Warrior and stopping Jack's plan, though to truly put an end to it, they had to end Jack as well. With the Warrior dead and his plan unraveled, the mighty Handsome Jack had been reduced to what he really was. Stripped from his formidable facade was a child who had never gotten his proper needs met, prone to lashing out at those who stopped him from doing exactly what he wanted at any given moment. So it's only fitting that that's how he would end, in a matter exactly that of how he began. In the exact instance of Jack's death, a dead man switch would activate, sending a signal to the Handsome Jackpot with the order to go into lockdown. This would take immediate effect, causing station-wide chaos. Over the coming years, those trapped within the casino, such as Timothy Lawrence, Pretty Boy, Freddy, and Ember, would slowly begin to form their own kind of society, one it was just as cruel and twisted as Handsome Jack himself. In the Vault of the Warrior, Brick and Mordecai would finally catch up to Lilith and the Vault Hunters. Lilith would first berate them for their absence, but then turn her frustration on the vault's key, saying that if she never saw it again, it would be too soon. Just then, as she began to concentrate her energy into the key, something inside of it was unlocked. A map of sorts that pointed them to the other vaults on other worlds. The significance of this discovery would not go unnoticed, though the truth of what it was and why it was there would remain a mystery for years to come. Like the Vault Hunters before them, Axton, Maya, Krieg, Gage, Salvador, and Zero would go on to become renowned for their victory against Handsome Jack. But even with the fame and fortune that followed their incredible accomplishment, the Vault Hunters weren't done, as another treasure just as legendary as the vaults would pique their interest: Captain Blade's lost treasure of the sands. In search of Captain Blade's lost treasure, the Vault Hunters travel to the forgotten ghost town of Oasis. There, they are contacted by a strange man named Shade, who requests their assistance to fend off some pirates who were demanding his water. After successfully defeating the pirates, the Vault Hunters are contacted by the desert's sole leader, the Pirate Queen Captain Scarlet. She says that she would like to work together with the Vault Hunters to find the treasure, though she doesn't take fighting it out off the table. They then travel to meet with Captain Scarlet, who informs them that to find the treasure, they must obtain all 4 pieces of a mystical compass, one of which she has. The other she knows of is in possession of a pirate named Sandman, who the Vault Hunters are swift to kill. Alongside his piece of the compass, they find his diary, which points them to a 3rd piece that's being transported by a Hyperion caravan. The Vault Hunters make quick work of the caravan, then meet back up with Captain Scarlet. She tells them that the next piece is in possession of a man named Herbert, a hermit who's obsessed with her to an unhealthy extent. After helping Herbert, the Vault Hunters obtain the 3rd compass piece. With the 3 pieces in their possession, the Vault Hunters meet back up with Scarlet, who then gives them her piece to assemble the compass. With the compass complete, Scarlet sends them to a lighthouse to reveal the location of the treasure using the compass. This reveals the treasure's location to be in the desert of Wormwater. Unsurprisingly, Scarlet uses this opportunity to get a head start on the treasure, which ends in her being swallowed by a massive creature called the Leviathan. Unaware of this, the Vault Hunters follow suit, where they find themselves face to face with Scarlet and her pet Rackhive named Roscoe in the stomach of the Leviathan. After defeating Roscoe, Scarlet teleports away in defeat, leaving the Vault Hunters to escape inside of the Leviathan. After doing so, they face the monster head on, defeating it and claiming the treasure of the sands for themselves, which they find had been an open vault all along. Not long after finding Captain Blade's treasure, the Vault Hunters would be invited to partake in a tournament held by Mr. Torg, the exuberant mascot of the Torg Corporation. This tournament would take place in the so-called Badass Crater of Badassitude, which just so happens to reside on a vault that, as Tanis notes, can only be opened with the blood of the ultimate coward. With this in mind, the Vault Hunters accept the invitation, knowing they themselves are far from cowardly. While traveling to the arena, Mr. Torg is quick to note that if they want to open the vault, they first have to rise on the leaderboard. However, to accomplish that, they must obtain a sponsor. They do so by impressing the highest ranked contestant, a man by the name of Piston, who many accuse of cheating to have earned his position. With the sponsor, the Vault Hunters are able to fight in the arena. However, before they can prove themselves, Piston begins releasing sleeping gas into the arena, which knocks out the Vault Hunter. They are then dragged out of the main stage, where both Torg and Piston begin to paint them as a coward for running away. Torg informs the Vault Hunters that if they want a new sponsor, they must travel to the town of Beatdown to fight Pyro Pete, who has kidnapped the only person who might sponsor them. After defeating Pyro Pete, the Vault Hunters find their new sponsor is none other than Moxie. With a new sponsor, the Vault Hunters hunt down the 3rd and 2nd place contestants, which include a woman named Motor Mama and a kid named Flyboy. Doing so grants them 2nd place, which allows them to travel back into the arena, where they confront Piston, the ultimate coward. Once killed, the vault below the arena opens, showering the Vault Hunters in weapons and glory alike. With the death of Handsome Jack, the employees of Hyperion would find themselves in a bit of a power struggle, as many of them idealized Handsome Jack for his cutthroat practices and unwavering ambition. But of these ideologues, none held Handsome Jack in his high esteem as Professor Nakayama. Driven by the loss of his idol, Nakayama would fill his ship, the HSS Terminus, with iridium and research equipment, vowing to spend all of his efforts to continue Jack's legacy. He did so by developing a state-of-the-art AI replica of Handsome Jack's mind. Alongside this accomplishment, the HSS Terminus would crash land on Pandora, where he would then begin experimenting to clone the body of Handsome Jack as well. To this end, he would develop monstrosities such as Woundspike and Jackenstein, as well as augment himself with an iridium-powered shoulder cannon. Soon enough, his immoral experiments would come to an end when he would go out of his way to contact some nearby hunters. After all their wild adventures, the Vault Hunters found themselves ready for a change of pace, a departure from their usual vault-centric expeditions. So when Sir Hammerlock invited them on a relaxing hunting trip, they didn't hesitate to accept. Upon arriving at Aegris, the Vault Hunters meet up with Hammerlock, where they clear out a nearby lodge to begin their hunt. Suddenly, they are contacted by Professor Nakayama, who assumes they are after him. Both Hammerlock and the Vault Hunters ignore Nakayama and carry on their hunting until he contacts them once more, pleading for them to come after him. On their way to do so, the Vault Hunters would find that the locals had been worshipping Claptrap, but after he begins to badmouth Jack, they attempt to kill him. After defending Claptrap from the locals, the Vault Hunters move on to a nearby research station, where they begin destroying samples of Jack's DNA to stop Nakayama from cloning him. Afterwards, they shut off the power to Nakayama's experiments, which forces him to unleash Woundspike. After easily killing Woundspike, the Vault Hunters travel back to the lodge, where they then move on to kill Nakayama at the HSS Terminus. Upon entering his ship, Nakayama releases Jackenstein to kill the Vault Hunters. While more difficult than his other experiment, the Vault Hunters are victorious. Finally, Nakayama comes out to confront the Vault Hunters himself, where he then trips down some stairs, which ends up killing him. And while it may have been the end of Nakayama, it was not the end of his influence, as soon after the Vault Hunters had looted his ship, his body, in possession of the Handsome Jack AI, would be taken to be taxidermied and put on display at the World of Curiosities Museum in Prosperity Junction. A year after the fall of Handsome Jack, Lilith had found herself the interim commander of the Crimson Raiders, a position she had not yet fully embraced, though those around her thought it suited her well. In this time, she and the Raiders had cleaned up much of the mess Jack had made of Pandora, though they were far from complete. Alongside this, other loose ends presented themselves, the most notable of which were reports of an assassin killing almost exclusively ex-Atlas employees. Lilith instantly recognized this as the work of Athena, who, last she saw, was helping Jack open the vault on Elpis. Unknowing of Athena's true intentions and the entire story of Jack's rise to power, she would send Brick and Mordecai to track her down, where they might then learn the full truth. In this same vein, she also sent Axton and Gage to capture Aurelia Hammerlock, who might have been able to corroborate Athena's story. Meanwhile, Moxie sends Zero to look for another rumor regarding Atlas, a mysterious vault-seeking device known as the Gortys Project. In the underground town of Hollow Point, Pandora, a pair of crafty sisters named Fiona and Sasha begin gearing up to pull off the most important job of their lives, selling a fake vault key. For this, they required the help of Felix, a genius in the art of swindling and their lifelong mentor. As Felix finished replicating the vault key, Fiona would grow nervous as the scale and speed of this job was unlike any other that she had been a part of. Felix would attempt to ease her nerves before equipping her with a wrist-mounted pistol in case things got rough. Fiona would then begin to make her way to a nearby bar where she would meet with August, the fence for the operation, and her sister's pseudo-boyfriend. As they began to talk business, August would contact the Hyperion executive he was selling the key to, a man by the name of Vasquez. On Helios, the chaos of Handsome Jack's vacancy had yet to subside. Some, like a man named Reese, took this as a challenge, playing by the book to impress their superiors. The idea being that once their boss moved up the chain of command, they themselves would be promoted. However, not everyone shared Reese's perspective. Others, like Vasquez, saw Jack's absence as an opportunity to play by their own rules. While on his way to receive his hard-earned promotion, Reese, alongside his friend Vaughn, would daydream about their upcoming life as Hyperion executives. However, this was cut short, when Reese saw his old boss had been replaced by his arch rival. As Reese attempted to question Vasquez about the situation, he would notice his old boss's body floating lifeless in space. Reese would take this as the threat it was, while Vasquez would suddenly get a call from August about the sale of the vault key. This would pique Reese's interest, and by using his Echo Eye, Reese would learn of the key's sale, including August's asking price of $10 million. After Vasquez finished the call, he would end their conversation by promoting Reese to senior vice janitor. Afterwards, Reese would meet up with Vaughn in the hall, where they would run into Yvette, their only other friend at Hyperion. As they walked the halls, Reese would propose the idea of stealing the vault key out from under Vasquez. Vaughn is immediately on board and able to wire themselves $10 million from Hyperion, which he notes will go unnoticed if they can get the key in time. The last person to agree is Yvette, who they eventually convince to help them by simply requisitioning any supplies they may need. With $10 million, Reese and Vaughn travel to Prosperity Junction, where they plan to meet August at a museum called the World of Curiosities. On the way, they encounter some bandits who attempt to kill them. However, with the help of a friendly loader bot, they are able to fight their way to the museum. There, they find a number of unique exhibits, one of which displays the body of Professor Nakayama. While examining him, they find an unassuming Hyperion ID chip, which they take to sell to Hyperion. Afterwards, they meet with Shade, who had disguised himself as part of the exhibit. After initial introductions, Shade takes them to meet with August. As they begin to talk, Sasha, who is alongside August, sees Reese's Echo Eye and becomes worried that he may be able to scan the key, revealing its fraudulent nature. She relays this information to Felix and Fiona, who whip up a plan to disable Reese's eye using a short-range EMP. Fiona grabs the EMP and, with the help of Sasha, attaches it to the key's case. They then begin to finalize the sale. However, right before Reese scans the eye, Fiona activates the EMP, which also disables his arm. As tensions rise, a bandit named Bossanova suddenly breaks through the wall, causing the case of money to fall directly below him. Zero follows suit, confronting Bossanova for information he seeks about the Gortys project. Both Sasha and Vaughn then make a run for the money before Bossanova picks it up and leaves, with Zero following directly after. After the dust settles, Reese and Vaughn attempt to hijack Felix's caravan, however they are caught. As they are being confronted, August begins shooting at the vehicle, which prompts them to leave as a group. While on the road, Sasha and Fiona threaten to kill Reese and Vaughn unless they can help them get the money. Reese contacts Yvette, who tells him that she can't help him anymore as Hyperion has begun looking for them. Sasha then begins to shove Reese out of the caravan before he claims he can help find the case himself by using the ID chip he found on Nakayama, which he presumes to have a higher security clearance. Both Sasha and Fiona hesitantly agree, and Reese inserts the ID chip into his head, unknowingly inserting a copy of Handsome Jack's mind into his own. This overwhelms Reese's mind, which causes him to pass out, giving Vaughn enough time to track the case of money himself. Hours later, Reese wakes up to find they have arrived at the case's location, a massive arena built above an old Atlas facility. The group devises a plan to break into the arena, which results in them splitting up. Reese and Sasha go underground, where they meet with Zero, while Fiona and Vaughn find themselves partaking in the arena's death rally. While Reese, Sasha, and Zero battle it out in the center of the arena, Fiona and Vaughn race around the outer ring. The fight in the center sends the case of money to a vehicle near Fiona, which results in a tense chase, ending in Felix, who had recently joined the race, miraculously catching the money at the last second. Fiona then climbs into the caravan, where Felix, money in hand, betrays Fiona. He then opens up the case, causing it to explode. As money rains from above, Zero manages to interrogate and kill Bossanova, where he learns that he had no knowledge of the Gortys project. After Zero's departure, Loaderbot arrives at their location, which causes the platform Reese is standing on to fall, revealing a secret room below them. Reese and Fiona are quick to find a secret pair of Atlas devices that turn out to be a map when conjoined. As the group ponders the nature of the map, Handsome Jack appears in the mind of Reese, which naturally causes him to panic. In this state, he retreats to the second floor, where he and Jack talk while Fiona and the others find that she and Reese are the only ones who can touch the device. They are then made aware of a computer terminal that can only be opened with a retinal scan of a high-ranking Atlas employee. Luckily, they find one nearby that they are unawares in suspended animation. Seeing as they think he is dead and are unable to move him, they carve out his eye. After unlocking the computer, they learn the grim reality of their actions, as well as the true location of the Gortys Project, which resides in Old Haven. After Reese falls from the second floor, the group notices Hyperion moonshots directed at their location. Loaderbot helps them escape the facility, where they attempt to find safety by driving away in the caravan. As they are driving, the moonshots awaken a rak hive, which begins to chase them. After barely managing to kill the rak hive, Reese and Vaughn become stranded in the desert, while Fiona and Sasha barely manage to make their way to Hollow Point. At Hollow Point, Fiona meets with Scooter at a catch-a-ride station to repair her vehicle. Scooter thankfully recognizes the vehicle as the winner of Bossa Nova's death rally and proposes to fix the caravan in exchange for an endorsement. They accept, and while Scooter fixes the caravan, Fiona and Sasha travel back to Felix's old hideout. Upon exploring the hideout, they find a few items, including 2 small boxes Felix had left them. One is marked F for Fiona, and the other S for Sasha. Inside Fiona's, she finds an upgrade to her gun which gives it elemental effects. However, Sasha refuses her gift for the time being. They are then interrupted by 2 men named Finch and Kroger. Fiona pulls her gun on Finch, shooting him with her upgraded gun. This creates an opening, allowing Sasha to hit Kroger with a pan. As they make their escape, they are seemingly attacked by Athena, who is presumably attempting to cash in the bounty on them. They barely manage to evade her, just long enough to meet back up with Scooter, who's with Janie Springs. When Athena catches up to them, it's revealed that Athena and Janie are a couple, though Athena was supposed to give up bounty and vault hunting a long time ago. After Athena backs off, Fiona and Sasha leave for Old Haven, where they plan to meet with Reese and Vaughn. Meanwhile, Reese and Vaughn traverse the desert of Pandora, where Reese talks to handsome Jack yet again. However, they are interrupted by the arrival of Vasquez. Gun in hand, Vasquez attempts to get Reese and Vaughn to dig their own graves. However, using his Echo Eye, Reese is able to hack Vasquez's equipment, giving them an opportunity to escape on Loaderbot. They then travel to Old Haven, where Reese uses his Echo Eye to uncover the Gortys Project. When they travel inside, they are soon ambushed by August, who holds them hostage until Fiona and Sasha arrive. As soon as Fiona and Sasha arrive, Vasquez makes it known that he and August are working together. They then force Reese and Fiona to take the 2 halves of the map they'd found to activate a terminal inside the facility's central room. They do so, which results in the map being placed into some sort of sphere, which nearly falls off the platform. This triggers the facility's defenses, which they narrowly escape by traveling through a maintenance hatch. Using their supreme stealth skills, they manage to fight their way out of the facility. Outside, they are met by Valerie, August and Vasquez's boss. Valerie immediately begins to question Fiona about who's responsible for previous events. Fiona pins the blame on Vasquez, which prompts Valerie to shoot him. She then holds Fiona at gunpoint, but right before she's shot, Athena comes to the rescue. Valerie is then forced to flee, leaving the Gortys core with the group. After conversing, they activate the Gortys core found within the facility, revealing the sphere to be a robot designed to track the vault of the Traveler. However, to do so, she must find a few missing components, the first of which is her energy chassis, located in an old Atlas biodome. Once inside the biodome, they meet a mysterious scientist named Cassius, who keeps Vaughn company while the others search for the energy chassis. After obtaining it, they all meet back up with Cassius, who reveals himself to be an Atlas scientist, who, as far as he is aware, is the last Atlas employee remaining. Athena is quick to try to kill him, but not before Brick makes his sudden appearance. Adding to this chaos is Valerie, who fires a rocket at the building, splitting the group in 2. While Reese is being held hostage by Valerie, Loaderbot keeps Gortys safe. That is until Vaughn jumps onto Valerie from above, creating an opportunity for both Reese and Gortys to escape. Fiona at this time is being held hostage by Finch and Kroger, who she manages to take down with the help of Sasha. Loaderbot then arrives to take Sasha, and later Reese, to help Gortys. With their combined efforts, they manage to attach the energy chassis to Gortys. Meanwhile, Fiona attempts to help Athena fight Brick as well as Mordecai, who had recently joined the fight. After lengthy battles, both groups eventually find themselves outside and out of options. Athena is taken by Brick and Mordecai, who make their way back to Sanctuary, while Gortys reveals that the second component, the beacon, resides on Helios. While Fiona, Rhys, and the others begin to make preparations to find the beacon, Brick and Mordecai drop Athena off at Sanctuary. There, Lilith begins her interrogation by asking Athena why she helped Jack all those years ago. Athena then recounts her side of the story, from the moment she was hired to the moment she left. It's clear that Athena regrets her decision to help Jack, but Lilith can't forgive her for what she did. After all, if she didn't help him, Roland might still be alive. She orders a squad of Crimson Raiders to execute Athena, but their bullets are stopped midair by the Watcher. They warn that war is coming, and they will need every Vault Hunter they can get. Back at the caravan, Fiona, Rhys, and the others plan to steal the beacon, which Jack tells Rhys is in his office. This inspires Rhys to come up with a plan involving Scooter building them a rocket and using Vasquez's body as a disguise. While Fiona and Sasha convince Scooter and Janie to help them build a rocket, Rhys and Vaughn make their way back to Old Haven, where Rhys finds Vasquez's face has been cut off by a psycho. Rhys is forced to find it, where he then uploads it to a new use station before their trip to Helios. Once the rocket is complete, the group, including Scooter and excluding Vaughn, travel to Helios. Upon reaching escape velocity, the ship's rocket boosters malfunction, forcing Fiona and Scooter to detach the boosters manually from the ship's hull. Fiona is able to do this without much of a problem, however Scooter gets his hand stuck. With little to no time left, Scooter decides that their only option is to detach the booster with him still attached. Fiona attempts to think of another way, but with everyone's lives on the line, she's forced to agree. She detaches the booster, and Scooter catches one last ride before the booster explodes. Once back inside, Fiona decides to honor Scooter in the only way she can, by releasing an advertisement in space containing a few choice words. Once they arrive at Helios, Rhys quickly disguises himself as Vasquez before heading inside. After confronting Yvette, he makes his way to Vasquez's office, where he hacks into the security cameras to help Fiona and the others steal a tour guide's keycard. With the keycard in their possession, Fiona and Gortys travel to Jack's office, however they are stopped by a group of Jack-obsessed tourists. Fiona is then forced to bluff her way through a tour guide before reaching Jack's office. However, before she can enter, one of the tourists attempts to enter the office, which evaporates him and initiates a lockdown. This forces Rhys to come up with a new plan, which involves Fiona getting arrested. She does so by destroying one of Jack's possessions, while Rhys makes his way to find her. Along the way, he gets into a shootout of sorts, which seems to be common practice with Hyperion executives. He then meets up with Fiona, who assists him in climbing a secret passage to Jack's office. There, he finds the beacon, as well as a number of other memorabilia. Meanwhile, Sasha, Fiona, and Gortys are caught by Yvette, though they are eventually able to escape. Back in the office, Jack attempts to convince Rhys to become his successor, to accomplish all the things he couldn't. Rhys, of course, refuses, which prompts Jack to use the little control he has over Rhys's body to upload his consciousness to Helios. He then attempts to replace Rhys's body with an endoskeleton, though Rhys manages to escape with the beacon in hand. To keep Rhys and the others from escaping, Jack puts Helios into lockdown, which forces Rhys to head for the power core, while the others attempt to reach the caravan. While Rhys disables the power core, August, Kroger, and Finch betray the others by taking Gortys, Sasha, the beacon, and the caravan to Pandora. This leaves Fiona, Rhys, and Loaderbot stranded on Helios. With the power shut down, Helios begins to fall towards Pandora, causing station-wide panic. Fiona and Loaderbot manage to find an escape pod, but Loaderbot sends Fiona alone so he can save Rhys. After doing so, they search for an escape pod, but none appear to be fully functional or big enough for the both of them. Rhys refuses to give up, but when they encounter Kroger, Loaderbot decides to sacrifice himself to allow for Rhys's escape. After crashing on Pandora, Rhys begins to explore the wreckage of Helios until he stumbles upon Jack's office. There, he listens to what he would like to think are Jack's final words. those of regret and disappointment with his past and all those he lost. But just as Rhys was beginning to sympathize with him, Jack reveals his true intentions by transferring himself back into Rhys's mind. He then begins to strangle Rhys, saying that what he's about to do will be worth dying over, to see Rhys, the man who brought down Helios, dead. But in his final moments, Rhys impales his arm on a pole, ripping it from his torso. Jack solemnly congratulates Rhys for living another day, but says that he will continue to make his life hell for as long as he's still inside his head. Rhys then picks up a piece of glass and begins digging into the side of his head. Jack begins to panic and beg for Rhys to stop, a far cry from his calm and collected demeanor just minutes earlier. Rhys continues, pulling the echo eye from his eye, returning Jack to his rightful place in death. Meanwhile, Fiona finds herself in the middle of what looks to be a climactic fight between a behemoth-sized Gortys and a giant vault monster. As she traverses the terrain, she attempts to find Sasha, but instead stumbles upon Valerie and her subordinates. Valerie states that they need to destroy Gortys or the vault monster will kill them all. As she attempts to do so using her rocket launcher, the vault monster kills her. Suddenly, Gortys calls out to Fiona, asking her to carry out this task. Fiona hesitates at first, but is then forced to attempt it. Her first shot misses, as the launcher is far too heavy for her, but with some assistance from Sasha, they grant Gortys her wish. However, unknown to them, Loaderbot was alive, and he would take their actions against Gortys as the ultimate form of betrayal. After the destruction of Gortys, Loaderbot, dazed by confusion, would travel back to Helios, where he would take the endoskeleton Jack had made for himself. He would then don a Hyperion containment outfit, as well as a mask, traveling Pandora with only one goal in mind. He would find Fiona and Rhys and learn the truth. In this time, Fiona would presumably continue vault hunting, while Rhys would take the rights to Atlas from Jack's trophy case with the intention to rebuild it from the ground up. For this, he refurbished the old Atlas facility they had found and began working on some product prototypes as well as replacements for his arm and eye. Vaughn, inspired by his recent adventures, would start a bandit camp, consisting of mostly ex-Hyperion that had crashed alongside Helios. Their name would fittingly become the Children of Helios, and over the next few months, they would claim the wreckage of Helios as their own. After months of searching, Loaderbot was able to track down and capture both Fiona and Rhys. Alongside this, he would hire Kroger to kidnap Vaughn. In search of answers, Loaderbot would have Rhys and Fiona recount their sides of the story, all the while collecting the scattered pieces of Gortys. Near the end of this journey, Kroger would fulfill his contract to deliver Vaughn. Afterwards, he would try to kill Fiona, but not before Loaderbot would kill him first for what he did on Helios. Vaughn would then raise his hands as, unknown to Loaderbot, he had snipers standing by to protect him. The snipers would focus on Loaderbot as Vaughn would cut Fiona and Rhys free, afterwards revealing his true identity. He would then take Loaderbot as prisoner and lead them into his camp, where Loaderbot would reveal his identity as well as his true intentions. After learning the truth about what happened to Gortys, Loaderbot proposes an idea. They would summon the Vault of the Traveler once more, this time with a plan. This was the only way to bring Gortys back, to succeed where they had failed long ago. The only thing that was left was to build a team. After assembling their team, the group concoct a plan that has one team traveling inside the vault monster to destroy its teleportation organ, while the others keep it busy so they can destroy it using Helios. With the plan in place, they reconstruct Gortys once more. This immediately summons the Vault of the Traveler, which Gortys notes she is not confident she can fight. To help with this, she has Rhys control her movements, while Fiona and Sasha travel to the caravan that they plan to use to reach the vault monster. At Rhys's signal, Fiona and Sasha launch the caravan into the air. The vault monster then teleports directly to their location, which puts them inside the monster. While Gortys, with the help of the others, fights the monster, Fiona and Sasha plant explosives in its core. They then use the caravan to escape, however on their way out, they find the detonator has a much shorter range than they thought. While Fiona begins to think of a way they can turn back, Sasha doesn't hesitate to risk her own life to save theirs. With the vault monster unable to teleport, they are able to hit it with Helios's beam. This creates a weak point that Gortys and the others use to defeat it once and for all. With the vault monster defeated, Rhys and Fiona search for Sasha, who they find barely alive. Sasha asks Fiona if she still has the gift that Felix left her. Fiona pulls it out, and Sasha says that it was hard not to look, but she thinks she's ready now. Once opened, she finds a watch engraved with a single phrase: "Time heals all wounds." After taking her final breaths, the watch begins to glow and lift her into the air, healing her completely before dropping her onto the floor. With Sasha healed and the vault monster defeated, Rhys and Fiona make a mad dash for the vault while the others collect the monster's loot. Once inside the vault, they begin to discuss the future, with Rhys saying that he's going to continue rebuilding Atlas, while Fiona says she's going to continue vault hunting. At the apex of the vault, they find a glowing chest, which they opt to open together. As the chest begins to open, a flash of light is seen as both Rhys and Fiona disappear into what remains to be the unknown. With the destruction of Helios, Hyperion's dominance over Pandora was all but gone. This put Lilith and the others in a unique position where they can now focus on leaving Pandora to pursue other vaults depicted on the vault map. However, this called into question the necessity of the Crimson Raiders, as their ultimate goal of relative peace on Pandora had now been accomplished. With this, talks of the Crimson Raiders' disbandment became increasingly common. Lilith, as well as the others, knew that this was the result of their lack of clear leadership. With no one there to call the shots or provide direction, the Crimson Raiders were destined to end. In the year since the cave-in, Colonel Hector and the 191st had fallen on hard times. They were promised a paradise that had never been closer to hell in their entire lives. This desperation that Hector felt his men were undeserving of inspired him to change his perspective. If they weren't going to be guided to paradise, then they would have to make it themselves, right here on Pandora. To do this, Hector would experiment with strange spores they had found underground that vastly accelerated plant growth. The potential for these spores to change the face of Pandora was great, though it wouldn't be fully realized until one day Cassius would stumble upon Hector and his brigade. Hector would quickly enlist Cassius, who immediately saw the potential of Hector's plan to release spores into the atmosphere. Over the next few months, Cassius would work to perfect the substance that would eventually become known as Paradise Gas. But before he could create a version safe for human contact, Colonel Hector would use the gas to assault the children of Helios, taking their moonshot cannon to disperse the gas further. Soon after, he would plan to assault the Crimson Raiders on Sanctuary to obtain the vault key. With it, he could finally create his worldwide paradise he would call New Pandora. During their conversation about the lack of direction within the Crimson Raiders, Lilith and the others are attacked by the new Pandoran army. The Vault Hunters are quick to react, but after the introduction of Paradise Gas, the Crimson Raiders are forced to abandon Sanctuary. While Hector takes control of Sanctuary and the Vault Key, the Vault Hunters find themselves within a section of the ruins of Helios called the Backburner. There they encounter Vaughn, who helps them secure the Backburner before Lilith arrives. She first attempts to retake Sanctuary, but she's unsuccessful. She then contacts Tanis, who concocts a plan to create an antidote for the gas's effects. This plan involves the Vault Hunters collecting some flower samples, which they send to Tanis. While Tanis works on the antidote, the Vault Hunters try to find another way back to Sanctuary now that the fast travel is disabled. Mordecai says he found a way, but before the Vault Hunters can get to him, he's captured. Fortunately, Mordecai's new bird, Talon, leads the Vault Hunters to his location, but before they can save him, Mordecai is infected by the spores. This makes it all the more important for them to find an antidote, which Cassius notes he can help them with, seeing as he created the gas. To open the reinforced door blocking them from Cassius, the Vault Hunters travel to Helios' moonshot cannon. Along the way, they meet with Brick and Tiny Tina. Brick helps them infiltrate Helios, while Tina helps them construct a bomb that they shoot at the reinforced door using the moonshot cannon. After traveling to the Backburner to obtain a sample of Mordecai's infected blood, the Vault Hunters make their way inside Mount Scarab, fighting their way to Cassius. But before they can reach him, Hector releases Paradise Gas into his lab. This forces Cassius to quarantine himself, while the Vault Hunters synthesize an antidote using Mordecai's infected blood. However, this fails, forcing the Vault Hunters to kill Cassius at his request to obtain his infected blood. After killing Cassius, the Vault Hunters synthesize an antidote which grants them immunity to the gas. With this, they make their way to Sanctuary, where they confront Colonel Hector, who allows himself to become fully infected by the gas. After a long fight, Colonel Hector is defeated, but as the Vault Hunters reach for the key, his body is reanimated. It then becomes clear to Lilith that while Hector has the vault key, the only thing they can do to save Pandora is to destroy Sanctuary. To do this, the Vault Hunters travel to Crazy Earl's Iridium stash and give it to Lilith. With her enhanced powers, Lilith first teleports the remaining Crimson Raiders to safety, then channels her energy into the heart of Sanctuary. While their home may have been destroyed and the vault map long lost, the Crimson Raiders would live on, this time under the clear leadership of Commander Lilith. As the months passed, the mighty Vault Hunters who had slain Handsome Jack would begin to search for a life of meaning outside of vault hunting. Axton would use his newfound fame to become a model of sorts before trying his hand at other ventures such as television broadcasting. Eventually, he and Salvador would begin working for a show known as Arms Race, though it would be years until it would see the light of day. Zero decided to venture to Promethea, where he would reunite with Reese to help rebuild the Atlas Corporation. The exact reasons behind this are, as is often with Zero, unknown. Gage would move on from life in the public eye, instead preferring to lay low as she was still on the run from the incident on Eden 5. While lying low, she would eventually find a few gigs as an event planner, which helped keep her busy. Maya would find herself wanting to travel back to Athenas, where she would quickly find a role as the planet's protector. While fulfilling this role, a young girl named Ava would attempt to steal from the monastery's library. Instead of punishing Ava, Maya decided to recruit her as her apprentice. This would allow her to train Ava in a way that she never was, so she could eventually wield her powers for the betterment of the universe. Devastated by Maya's decision to leave, Krieg would simply find himself mindlessly roaming Pandora for months at a time. At some point, he would join Brick, Mordecai, and Tina's newly formed squad called the B-Team. However, this didn't last long, and he would find himself once again roaming Pandora. In this time, he attempted much introspection, though it never had concrete results. For that, something major would have to happen. Something that would change his world forever. In the 21 years since their birth, Tyreen and Troy DeLeon had become full-fledged megalomaniacs. The constant retelling of the Great Vault's story, paired with their unique Siren abilities, made them believe it was no coincidence they were given their incredible power. Because to them, finding the Great Vault was their destiny, their birthright granted to them by the universe itself. Or in other words, they saw themselves as gods. But what were gods without people to worship them? This was what drove Tyreen, and subsequently Troy, to take the first step in their journey to become gods. They would first renounce their last name, opting instead to inherit their mother's maiden name, Calypso. They would then follow this act by repairing their parents' crashed ship. Finally, they would leave the only planet they had ever known, stranding their father there, hoping that he might feel that same sense of imprisonment they had felt their entire lives. Over the next 3 years, Tyreen and Troy Calypso would wander the galaxy, garnering little attention. This was deliberate, as they knew that to become gods, they must first master their abilities. Alongside this, they would learn that the Borderlands were teeming with bandits and psychos. This sparked an idea. If they could somehow harness the abundance of bandits, they could create an army unlike any other in the history of the 6 galaxies. A cult of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of bandits, all willing to give their lives for their cause. All they had to do was learn the culture of the bandits and psychos, their language, beliefs, values, and norms. They had to master them all. And after those 3 long years, they were ready. The Calypso twins would set course for Pandora, the planet they had grown up hearing stories about, and the planet where they would ascend to godhood. Upon landing on Pandora, the Calypso twins would immediately begin integrating themselves into bandit society. At first, this resulted in a lot of frustration, as the bandits seemed to be senseless and unstable. But with much practice, bandits would one by one eventually come to worship them. With that, the Children of the Vault were born, and a new age of tyranny on Pandora would officially begin. Over the next year or so, the Children of the Vault, or COV, would only grow in numbers. First into the hundreds, as they united nearby bandit tribes, then into the thousands, as they began to scale their operation using social media. At that point, they would begin to garner attention from the Crimson Raiders, though they wouldn't fully understand the gravity of the situation until it was too late. After a while, the Children of the Vault had a grasp on Pandora, not unlike that of Atlas or Hyperion in years prior. However, this wasn't enough for the Calypso twins. They may have had an army of millions at their disposal, but they weren't all that godly. For that, they would need another kind of power. Power like that of the Destroyer in the Great Vault. With this in mind, the Calypso twins would begin making preparations to open vaults around the Borderlands to obtain enough power to open the Great Vault. To this end, they would ally with people like Katagawa Jr. at Malawan, who was in the process of attempting a hostile takeover of Atlas. Additionally, they would assist Aurelia Hammerlock in killing Montgomery Jacobs, placing her as Jacob's CEO. With their plans in motion, Tyreen and Troy would begin to focus on finding the vault map back on Pandora. This was when Lilith and the Crimson Raiders would truly recognize the catastrophic potential of the Children of the Vault. And as the twin gods began to scour the planet for the vault map, Lilith would begin a search of her very own. From within the Crimson Raiders' new ship known as Sanctuary 3, Lilith would send out a call for help to any aspiring vault hunters. Amara was born in the slums of the planet Partali, where she would learn to master her siren powers at a young age out of necessity. By the time she was a young woman, she had already taken down countless crime syndicates, which had donned her the name the Tiger of Partali. After a while, the planet would become quite a bit safer, and Amara, seeking a new challenge, would begin to look outward to the greater universe. This was when she would sense that calling that so many other sirens had felt, the pull toward her sisters, as well as Pandora. Once there, she would accept Lilith's call and begin her journey as a vault hunter. Brother to both Captain and Baron, Zane Flint is a high-level mercenary who prefers to use technology to augment his abilities. As per usual, his work as a mercenary garnered him an infamous reputation across the 6 galaxies, with his brothers even placing bounties on him before their demise. After a while, Zane would decide to semi-retire by traveling to a little-known, peaceful planet named Pandora. There, he lived a life of relative ease before hearing of a vault hunting gig. Zane had heard an old assassin acquaintance of his named Zero got into vault hunting about a decade ago, so he decided to give it a shot as well, thinking it couldn't be all that hard. Flak began their life as a simple digital indexing unit in an archiving center. While performing these duties, they somehow managed to cross the intelligence barrier into self-awareness, becoming a sentient being. After their awakening, Flak began wandering the galaxy in search of self-discovery. During this time, they would analyze human behavior, finding it quite difficult to grasp. Animal instincts, on the other hand, were much more manageable. With that, they formed a deep connection with wildlife and the art of the hunt, which became their ultimate driving force. So it's no surprise that this eventually led Flak to the greatest hunt of all. Not much is known about Mose before she joined Vladov's Ursa Corps, an elite selection of soldiers equipped with mechanical suits known as Iron Bears. As per their enlistment contract, Vladov grants members ownership of their Iron Bears after meeting specific quotas. However, Mose's superior kept raising hers. Eventually, he agreed that Mose could retire. However, she had to complete one final mission, a supposed easy in, easy out. But it was, of course, a suicide mission, and Mose was only able to escape thanks to her Iron Bear. Declared dead by Vladov, Mose was now free to go. However, the high maintenance costs of her Iron Bear usually drove her to partake in increasingly risky ventures in search of higher return, and nothing is more risky or lucrative than vault hunting. Upon answering Lilith's call, the Vault Hunters made their way to a town overrun by the Children of the Vault. After clearing the town, Marcus would pick them up on his bus and take them to a place called Covenant Pass. After stepping foot off the bus, the Vault Hunters would meet with Claptrap, who issues them their new and improved Echo devices. The Vault Hunters then follow Claptrap to the entrance of a COV propaganda center, where Claptrap is taken with the use of a giant magnet. After fighting their way through the base, the Vault Hunters save Claptrap and Lilith makes her grand entrance. After initial introductions, the Vault Hunters, along with Lilith, learn that a bandit clan known as the Sun Smashers have possession of the Vault map. Following this lead, they find the clan's chief, who turns out to be Vaughn. Vaughn says that after finding the map, his clan tied him up and went to sell it to the Calypsos. After obtaining access to a vehicle, the Vault Hunters make their way to the nearest COV base, where they defeat the cult spokesman Mouthpiece to obtain the map. After returning the map to Lilith, she attempts to charge it, however it malfunctions. To fix it, she sends the Vault Hunters to meet with Tanis. After it's fixed, they find the map is only partially working, though they're able to make out that one of the planets is Promethea. Promethea bound, the Vault Hunters make their way to Sanctuary 3, where they are tasked with fueling it before they make their departure. However, before they leave, Lilith is ambushed by Tyreen and Troy. A short fight ensues, ending with Troy getting a hold of the Vault Key while Tyreen leeches Lilith's powers. Afterwards, she and Troy make a show of the ordeal before teleporting away with the use of Lilith's powers. After saving Lilith from COV bandits, the Vault Hunters and Crimson Raiders finally board Sanctuary 3 and leave Pandora for Promethea. On Promethea, the Vault Hunters meet up with a soldier named Lorelei, who helps them fight their way through Malawan troops until they eventually meet up with Zero. With his help, the Vault Hunters clear a Malawan weapons depot, where they then set their sights on a Malawan artificial intelligence named Gigamind. After taking down Gigamind, the Vault Hunters take its brain to Reese, who agrees to help them find the vault. A quick search through Gigamind's database reveals to Reese that a piece of the Promethean Vault Key lies on the planet Athenas. Back at Sanctuary 3, Lilith and the Vault Hunters contact Maya, who confirms Reese's findings. With that, the Vault Hunters travel to Athenas, where they find Malawan had already made their presence apparent. After battling Malawan's troops, they meet up with Maya, who helps them clear out the remainder of the troops in the monastery. Afterwards, Maya sends them to obtain some iridium in a nearby graveyard alongside her apprentice Ava. Meanwhile, she travels to a nearby library to collect a book about ancient Siren techniques that might allow her to actually utilize iridium. With the iridium in hand, the Vault Hunters go to meet back up with Maya. Before they can do so, they are stopped by Captain Trant, who they swiftly kill. Maya would then, for the first time ever, find herself using iridium to enhance her powers. With these enhanced abilities, Maya is able to open the door, which gives the Vault Hunters access to the first fragment of Promethea's Vault Key. Back on Sanctuary 3, Reese informs Lilith of an asteroid-mounted laser that Katagawa Jr. has pointed at Atlas HQ. Because the laser is powered by one of the Vault Key's fragments, he sees it as mutually beneficial for the Vault Hunters to help him decommission it. Lilith agrees, and the Vault Hunters are sent to help Reese. On Promethea, the Vault Hunters first attempt to use Reese's state-of-the-art ship to sneak aboard the asteroid, but after Katagawa destroys it, they instead opt to steal a Malawan ship. Once aboard the asteroid, the Vault Hunters fight their way through hundreds of Malawan troops, while Katagawa destroys each of Reese's favorite establishments on Promethea, one of which is a frozen yogurt shop named Franz Frogert's. After making their way to the laser's control room, the Vault Hunters secure the area, while Reese hacks into the laser's controls using a Malawan pleasure bot. After doing so, he fires a laser at Katagawa's pleasure yacht, which prompts Katagawa to release his giant death sphere known as Katagawa Ball. After its destruction, the Vault Hunters secure the key fragment powering the laser and return it to Tanis. Reese then finally reveals the last fragment to be in his possession, and even though it has spurred many of Atlas's projects, he's willing to get rid of it as long as the Vault Hunters continue to help him. In holding up their end of the deal, the Vault Hunters continue to fight Malawan at Atlas HQ before coming into contact with Zero, who had presumably switched sides for unknown reasons. Pressing forward, they learn that Zero didn't in fact switch sides at all, and the person they saw was simply Katagawa in a replica of Zero's suit. With this, a fight ensues that ends in the Vault Hunters killing him. Reese rewards them by handing over the final vault key fragment, which they return to Tanis. Reese then reveals the vault's location is under the city, and the Vault Hunters, alongside Maya, immediately make their way to it. Once confronted with the Vault Hunters insert the key. As the vault opens, they are instantly attacked by its corresponding vault monster, the Rampager. After a long fight, the Vault Hunters take the Rampager down, leaving the vault open for pillaging. At the same time, Ava makes her presence known, much to Maya's dismay. After the Vault Hunters loot what they can, they learn that the next vault's location is on Eden 6. But before they can celebrate, Tyreen and Troy teleport atop the Rampager's corpse. Tyreen immediately uses her power to steal the Rampager's life force, stating that the vault monsters themselves are the vault's treasure, not what they seem to protect. She then grabs hold of Ava, which prompts Maya to grab Troy. Troy then uses his parasitic Siren ability to violently rip Maya of her power, causing her body to instantly decay into ash. Now possessing Maya's phase lock abilities, Troy traps Ava, while he and Tyreen leave for Eden 6. Once back aboard Sanctuary, the Vault Hunters converse with Lilith and Tanis about Maya's death before they are contacted by a man named Wainwright Jacobs, Montgomery Jacobs' son. He states that the children of the Vault have already overrun Eden 6 and requests the Crimson Raiders' assistance as soon as possible. Once landed on the moon, the Vault Hunters meet with Wainwright, who states that the COV had taken his partner, Sir Hammerlock, as prisoner. In return for their help, he promises to help them open the vault. The Vault Hunters travel towards the prison in the Anvil, where they plan to meet with someone named Meathead. Unsurprisingly, Meathead turns out to be Brick, who had traveled here alongside the rest of the B team. With their help, the Vault Hunters manage to fight through the prison, kill the warden, and rescue Hammerlock. After rescuing Sir Hammerlock, the Vault Hunters are contacted by his sister Aurelia, who invites them to Jacob's manor. Wainwright encourages them to accept the invitation so they can gain access to a clue to the vault's location that his father left in the manor. But after traveling there, they find that Aurelia and the Calypsos are working together. As the Vault Hunters are suspended in the air, Wainwright shoots Troy, which causes him to retreat. The Vault Hunters then clear out the manor and discover that Montgomery had left Wainwright a literal record with clues to the Vault Key's whereabouts. As Wainwright repairs his record player, he sends the Vault Hunters to recruit an army of people with the help of a gunslinger named Clay. After helping him rescue some rebels, the Vault Hunters travel back to the Jacobs estate, where they listen to Montgomery's final message. In this message, he notes that in preparation for his death, he hid one of the Vault Key's fragments somewhere in the crashed Jacobs ship named the Family Jewel. As the Vault Hunters make their way to the ship's remains, they are contacted by Balex, the ship's navigator. He notes that he can help them find the Family Jewel if they kill the giant dinosaur that ate him. After doing so, the Vault Hunters explore the wreckage of the Family Jewel, where they discover that it's been taken over by Balex's ex, Genevieve. After fighting their way through the ship, the Vault Hunters eventually take down Genevieve and recover the first fragment of the Vault Key. In search of the next fragment, the Vault Hunters meet with Clay, who assists them in hunting down a bandit named Archimedes. After defeating him, they move to secure the final fragment from Wainwright. Wainwright states that the final fragment had been hidden by Montgomery in the Jacobs powder cellar. After infiltrating the powder cellar using a secret entrance only known by Clay, they're eventually able to collect the fragment. However, as they do, Aurelia confronts Wainwright and Hammerlock. The Vault Hunters are quick to catch up, where they then fight Aurelia to save their friends. After her defeat, the Vault Hunters finally have access to the last remaining hurdle between them and the Vault. A simple puzzle requiring them to interact with statues of the Jacobs lineage, learning of the unique ways in which they died. After its conclusion, the Vault is revealed to be directly connected to the Jacobs Manor, the very thing that Typhon had deduced long ago. With the vault accessible, Tanis is able to meet the Vault Hunters at its entrance and mend the fragmented key. With this, they unlock the vault and battle the giant vault monster known as the Grave Ward. After its defeat, Tanis uses some sort of experimental technology to drain the life force from the monster, therefore blocking Tyreen from collecting its power. The Vault Hunters then travel inside the vault, collecting its loot. Upon their exit, they are forced to watch as Tanis is first phase locked by Troy, then teleported away by Tyreen. The Vault Hunters are quick to travel back to Sanctuary, where they watch a broadcast from the Calypso twins advertising their reasoning behind kidnapping Tanis. Turns out, they found the Great Vault's true key, and due to its size, they need a massive amount of Iridium to charge it. To raise funds for the Iridium, they set up a pledge drive, which they plan to draw attention to by killing one of the Crimson Raiders. So, they put it to a vote, and Tanis became the popular choice, though she was closely trailed by Claptrap. This made it clear that the Vault Hunters must act fast if they were to save her from whatever the Calypsos had planned. With this, they traveled back to Pandora, where they would meet with Vaughn to learn Tanis was taken to a place called Carnivora. After a quick detour in which the Vault Hunters obtain a golden vehicle, they are given access to the outskirts of Carnivora. But as they fight their way to its center, they learn that Carnivora isn't a place, but a vehicle. A giant death arena on wheels. To gain entry to its interior, the Vault Hunters chase the Carnivora down and destroy its fuel lines. Once stopped, they travel inside and fight dozens of COV until they are confronted by the main event, a duo of entertainers known as Pain and Terror. They attempt to kill the Vault Hunters, however they are unsuccessful. With the machine destroyed, Tanis uses the Iridium from its remains to enhance her Siren abilities and break free from her confinement, thus revealing her Siren abilities to the galaxy. On Sanctuary, Tanis reveals that when she was imprisoned, she learned where the Calypso twins were stockpiling their Iridium. However, the stronghold is well guarded by both COV bandits and advanced turrets. To take down the turrets, Tanis has the Vault Hunters retrieve an Iridium amplifier from an old lab of hers. After doing so, the Vault Hunters travel back to Sanctuary, where they see as the Calypso twins begin the process of charging Elpis, which they reveal is the Great Vault's key. As this is happening, the Vault Hunters begin a raid on the Cathedral of the Twin Gods with the help of Tanis and her Iridium amplifier. Once inside, they fight their way to the Great Vault, where they confront Tyreen and Troy. Troy is eager to fight, though in his arrogance, he underestimates the Vault Hunters. Without much effort, the Vault Hunters are able to take down Troy and seemingly Tyreen. As Troy breathes his final breath, Maya's abilities find their way to their rightful owner in Ava. As she, Tanis, and Lilith discuss what to do next, the entire planet begins to shake from its very core as the Destroyer's chains begin to loosen. As this is happening, Tyreen uses the last of her energy to leech what's left of Troy's power and attempt to kill the others. She then broadcasts her success and teleports away. After her departure, Ava is revealed to have saved their lives by shielding them with her powers directly before the moment of impact. They then discuss what they could possibly do now, before they're interrupted by a voice on a nearby echo device. The voice claims to be the legendary Typhon DeLeon, who tells them to travel to Necrotafeo, as the entirety of Pandora is at risk of being destroyed. After landing on Necrotafeo, the Vault Hunters fight their way through the planet's fauna before meeting with Typhon himself. With little time to explain, Typhon takes the Vault Hunters to the entrance of an Eridian mechanism he calls the Machine, which he hopes they can use to seal Pandora like the Eridians did long ago. The only problem is it requires 4 vault keys to access. Luckily, previous events have led to the Vault Hunters collecting the first 3. As for the last one, Typhon knows exactly where it is. After a lengthy journey, Typhon and the Vault Hunters eventually arrive at the key's location, which resides in the headstone of Leda Calypso. After taking the key back to Sanctuary for Tanis to charge, the Vault Hunters would use it to gain access to the machine. While Tanis operated the machine, the Vault Hunters and Typhon would begin powering it using the various vault keys. After connecting all the vaults to the machine, Tanis would take the final steps to attempt to seal Pandora once more. However, just before their success, Tyreen would personally interfere. As she would do so, Typhon would attempt to stop her by detonating a grenade. However, this attempt would be unsuccessful, as Tyreen would trap the grenade's energy and direct it back at him. Though the blast was deadly, Tyreen would not attempt to save her father. Instead, she would revel in the feeling of success, as now nothing could stop her from becoming a god. After Tyreen teleported away, Typhon would ask only one thing of Lilith before his passing. He would request that they not be the final Vault Hunters. He knew that even if they were to succeed, there would always be those to abuse the power of the vaults. However, by ensuring the continuation of vault hunters like himself and Lilith, there would always be someone to fight. With Typhon gone and the machine no longer operable, the only thing left to do was to face Typhon. As the vault hunters approached Typhon on the crest of Pandora's fracture, she would note that after she ascended to godhood, they shouldn't expect mercy. Just then, for the first time in thousands of years, the destroyer would truly break free of its confines, and the first thing it would come into contact with would be Typhon. Without hesitation, she would leech the power from the destroyer, an act that would turn herself into an unrecognizable monster known as Typhon the Destroyer. As the Vault Hunters battled Typhon in her twisted form, they would learn that while she had the powers of a godlike being, she was nowhere near invincible. Maybe this was due to her limited mortal form, or maybe, similarly to her brother, she would fail to recognize the true power of the Vault Hunters. As the battle drew to an end, the immense amount of power Typhon had stolen over the years was released into the universe. Alongside this, Lilith would be given her powers back, and the key to the Great Vault would be left lying on the ground. The Vault Hunters would be quick to pick this up, where they would then travel inside the vault, looting it for all it contained. After doing so, Lilith, Tanis, and Ava would begin to discuss the fallout of Typhon's death. While doing so, one thing became clear. Pandora was still in danger, because while they may have killed Typhon, the Great Vault known as Pandora was still in the process of opening, an act that would eventually rip the planet apart, killing millions if not billions of people worldwide. It's unknown exactly why, but at this critical moment, Lilith was confident that she had a solution.
What does Lilith think she's doing?
Closing the Great Vault. She's saving Pandora.
That could kill her!
She knows. She's the Firehawk. Not entirely. She's lighting the way.
Following the death of the Calypso twins, the Crimson Raiders found the galaxy in a state of relative peace. However, this didn't mean there weren't still messes left to be cleaned up. Messes that had been festering in their own filth for years, if not decades. One such mess was the handsome jackpot, that in all of its years of seclusion had become a cesspool of depravity and corruption. Moxie had suspected this for some time, though with the Calypso twins gone, she now had the opportunity to clean it of Jack's corruption. As the Vault Hunters arrived at the handsome jackpot, they were immediately met with hostility. As they fought their way through the casino, they would eventually be contacted by Pretty Boy, the self-proclaimed boss of the casino. When they traveled deeper, the Vault Hunters would meet a familiar face, more specifically, the face of Handsome Jack, though he claimed to be someone named Timothy Lawrence. Trusting his word, the Vault Hunters would follow him to his hideout, where Moxie would confirm his identity, though she seemed to have her own problems to work out with him. Afterwards, Timothy devises a plan to help the both of them by sending the Vault Hunters to meet with a woman named Ember. She says she can help, but only if they can retrieve the tools from her ship, which Pretty Boy has impounded. At the impound lot, the Vault Hunters come into contact with a man named Freddy, who says he can help them get Ember's tools back if they help him as well. They do so, and Freddy holds up his end of the deal, prompting Timothy to allow Freddy to join their growing team. After returning to Timothy, he states that to retake the casino, they need to get hold of one of Jack's suits, but to do that, they need his personal tailor. Luckily, he's still alive, though he resides in the underbelly of the station in a place known as Trashalantis. There, they find that the tailor is the mayor of the town, and if they want his help, they must first save the city by helping repair a metal beam holding their city from literal collapse. After doing so, the Vault Hunters travel back to Timothy's hideout to finish the final parts of the plan. First, they obtain blueprints to the casino. Afterwards, they collect a substance named Compound 24, which they plan to use to melt a reinforced door. Lastly, they collect parts to create the perfect replica of one of Handsome Jack's suits. With each of these accomplished, the infiltration begins. It starts with Timothy using his likeness as well as the suit to pass the initial security checkpoint. Afterwards, the Vault Hunters make their way to the station's power core to disable it. However, before they can, Freddy betrays the group, stating that Pretty Boy gave him an offer that he couldn't refuse. Even with Freddy working against them and without Timothy's help, the Vault Hunters manage to make their way to the power core where they disable the station's defenses. With the defenses down, they use Compound 24 to melt a hole in the main tower's titanium door. While doing so, they are met once again by Freddy, who they quickly kill. Once inside the tower, they ride the elevator to the top where they confront Pretty Boy for the first and final time. Equipped with the powerful suit known as the Jackpot, Pretty Boy gives himself just enough time for one final cowardly request. Before his death, he sets the casino on a collision course with the nearby black hole. While Timothy is the only person who can stop it, neither he nor the Vault Hunters can find a way to break him out of his imprisonment. But after a minute, it becomes clear that the only way to save himself and the casino is for Timothy to cut off his own hand. After the Vault Hunters use his hand to save the casino, Timothy and Moxie make their final amends, with Moxie admitting her admiration for Timothy once and for all. She then makes an immediate effort to destroy any trace of Handsome Jack's presence inside the casino before renaming it to Moxie's Big Score. With the Handsome Jackpot reclaimed, the Vault Hunters were soon enticed by yet another invitation. Unlike before, this one wasn't born of distress, but of celebration. Alistair Hammerlock and Wainwright Jacobs were set to tie the knot, and what better location for their destination wedding than the romantic yet eerie planet of Xylorgos. Upon arriving on Xylorgos, the Vault Hunters immediately make their way toward the wedding party. On their way, they encounter Gage, who Hammerlock had hired as their wedding planner. Alongside Gage, the Vault Hunters find their way to a place called the Lodge, where Gage has them begin setting up decor until Wainwright steps outside to calm his nerves. The Vault Hunters follow after him, where they eventually find him just outside the wedding's venue, which Wainwright states that he needs to see to ease his mind. Seeing as the main gate is locked, they attempt to find another way in, and that's when they stumble upon Eleanor and her bonded conducting a renewal ritual. Knowing there's no rational reason someone would be doing something like this, they stop the ritual. Upon doing so, the ring that's bonded to Vincent's soul falls on the ground. Wainwright curiously picks it up, which causes the ring to fasten to his finger. Possessed by the ring, Wainwright nearly completes the ritual himself, however DT saves him from doing so. Back at the lodge, Wainwright's partially possessed body fights to fend off Vincent's soul. To find out how to stop, or at least slow this, the Vault Hunters travel to a cemetery where they meet with a man named Burton. Burton guides the Vault Hunters to the Dustbound archives where they learn a part of Eleanor and Vincent's story, as well as find an old doll tape. This tape reveals that the ring's power comes from the heart of Githian. The plan then becomes to destroy Githian's heart, which can only be done using a piece of the heart itself, and the only one anyone knows of resides in Eleanor and Vincent's old doll research ship, which resides at the peak of a mountain. On their way to Eleanor's old ship, they meet with a primitive man named Aista. He states that the path to the top is blocked by an irregular kind of ice that can only be melted using the knife of a Wendigo. To help keep his mind off current events, Hammerlock joins the Vault Hunters in tracking down the creature. Once encountered and killed, the Vault Hunters use the knife to melt the ice and make their way to Eleanor's ship. After fighting their way through countless bonded, the Vault Hunters, Gage, and DT eventually reach the shard of Githyan's heart. Gage has the Vault Hunters install the shard into DT, however to use it, he has to overcharge himself using the ship's reactor. This causes the reactor to go critical, which the Vault Hunters attempt to stop before pulling the panic switch. DT then falls to the ground as another one of the Bonded's most powerful attacks the Vault Hunters. During this fight, DT comes back to life to help the Vault Hunters, with the shard making him far more powerful than before. Directly after this, Wainwright begins to be pulled to the heart of Githyan, which has the Vault Hunters chasing after him. At the heart, Eleanor and the heart itself work as one, while the Vault Hunters fight to keep Wainwright from Eleanor's clutches. In the end, both sides get their wish. Vincent is freed following the destruction of Githyan's heart. Though it's only for a moment, both he and Eleanor get to be together one last time before they both pass away. This causes their rings to lose their power, which inspires both Wainwright and Hammerlock to get married without hesitation. With the Vault Hunters officiating and using the rings forged from Githyan's heart, Hammerlock and Wainwright eternally seal their love. Spurred by the Jacobs Corporation's involvement long ago, the citizens of Gehenna have found themselves in an eternal struggle between the freedom of chaos and the safety of order. The former is spearheaded by a group known as the Devil Riders, who believe in freedom through domination, that those strong enough to take power have the right to use it however they please. Opposing them is the town of Vestige, the haven of order on Gehenna. For decades, war between these factions have ravaged the planet, though not as much as Jacobs before it. In a last-ditch effort to make peace, the Sheriff of Vestige would enact a final declaration of war. He would place a handful of bounties upon the heads of the most bloodthirsty Devil Riders. In response to this, the Vault Hunters sought out Gehenna, where they would unknowingly encounter the most devilish rider of them all. On Gehenna, the Vault Hunters immediately meet with a woman named Rose. Unaware of her intentions, they would help her fight her way to the town. However, just before entering, she would split from their group, promising to meet with them later. Once in the town, the Vault Hunters make their way to the saloon where they get into a brawl before it's broken up by the sheriff. They are then escorted by the sheriff to a seemingly dormant egg that serves as the centerpiece of the town. But just as the Vault Hunters reach it, Devil Riders, led by their leader Rose, attack the town. The Vault Hunters frantically run around the town trying to defend it, but after they return to the sheriff, they witness Rose kill him. Afterwards, she has the Devil Riders teleport the egg, as well as herself, to an unknown location. At this point, the Vault Hunters try to revive the sheriff, but it's too late. The only thing they can do now is take his badge and gun, as well as honor his final words, which were to find a woman named Juno. After talking to Juno, she points them to a Devil Rider hideout in a place called the Ashfall Peaks. At the Ashfall Peaks, the Vault Hunters meet with a man named Titus, who gives them a device that allows the Vault Hunters to use the abundance of core on Gehenna to their advantage. They then travel to a Devil Rider stronghold where they kill Cormash, obtaining a key to a secret room. Inside this room, they find a crater where the egg had once been, as well as proof that it's the egg of the Ruiner. The Vault Hunters take this proof back to Juno, but before they can properly talk, Devil Riders invade the town once more. After saving the town, Juno has a chance to clear the air, where she reveals that she used to be a Devil Rider called the Hatchet. This is the reason why she's hesitant to become the town's new sheriff, though even the old sheriff knew she was more than capable of doing the job. After learning of Juno's past, the Vault Hunters are sent to the Obsidian Forest to meet with a woman named Oletta. The Vault Hunters help Oletta with her core experiments before encountering a train belonging to the Devil Riders. Knowing nothing good could come of it, the Vault Hunters derail the train. However, this attracts some unwanted attention from a giant Bellic that the Vault Hunters eventually manage to kill. Afterwards, they meet with Juno, who states that to open the egg, Rose must be planning to use some serious firepower. To stop her, they travel inside an old Jacobs launch facility where they fight the Quartermaster. However, even with their success, the Vault Hunters are too late. With the bomb detonated, Rose could awaken the Ruiner at any moment, though the Vault Hunters had some business to settle in Vestige before they could go after her. After defending the town from the final onslaught of Devil Riders, the Vault Hunters would travel to Ground Zero, where they would face off against Rose. With her defeat, she would awaken the Ruiner, which the Vault Hunters would also eventually kill. Afterwards, they would travel back to Vestige, where the story of the Vault Hunters on Gehenna would become nothing short of legend. In all his time wandering Pandora, Krieg had only wished one thing: for his fractured mind that had been split between sane and psycho to be whole once more. But as is often with broken people, it would take something of grand scale to push him to make the ultimate decision towards self-growth. For Krieg, this event would be the death of Maya, a tragedy so severe that he would do something he'd never done before. A final Hail Mary to mend his fractured mind and wounded heart. Krieg would allow his friends to help. Tanis would be the first to jump to his aid, as studying a psycho and helping a friend was something she couldn't pass up. She would somehow find a way to create a physical manifestation of Krieg's mind, which she would then place in a psychologically neutral section of space. But as it was far too dangerous for her to traverse Krieg's unpredictable mind alone, she would ask the Vault Hunters for assistance. After arriving in Krieg's mind, the Vault Hunters would first survive Psycho Krieg's attacks before being introduced to a portion of Krieg's mind that holds his sanity. Here, the Vault Hunters would talk to both Sane and Psycho Krieg, finding that what they both wanted was to be rid of each other. However, to do this, they must first find a mythical place that all psychos share in common, an abstract location called Valhalla. To get there, the Vault Hunters must travel through Krieg's mind to find 3 pieces of a statue: a buzz axe, a gauntlet, and a mask. First is the buzz axe, which the Vault Hunters find by traveling through memories of Krieg's time fighting the children of the Vault. In the end, the Vault Hunters fight Psycho Krieg's manifestation of Lilith, who he assumed thought he was too unpredictable. After defeating her and collecting the buzz axe, Sane Krieg shows Psycho Krieg what his friends really thought of him: that they didn't see him as an unhinged monster, but as an equal, who they were all proud to call a friend. After returning the buzz axe to the statue, the Vault Hunters would travel to another section of Krieg's mind to retrieve the gauntlet, a section that was almost entirely dedicated to Maya. After traversing this part of his mind, the Vault Hunters would reach Locomobius, a manifestation of the fear Krieg felt the first time he and Maya met. After defeating it and collecting the gauntlet, Sane Krieg would show his psycho counterpart the truth of that first encounter, that she was the first person who had actually given them a chance, and even with her gone, they don't have to abandon the hope that she gave them. With the gauntlet returned to the statue, the mask was all that remained to enter Valhalla. Unfortunately, the mask was in a place that Krieg had never wanted to return to, the final part of his mind that held the memories of his painful past as a Hyperion guinea pig. While traveling through this section of Krieg's mind, the Vault Hunters learn of his origins as a psycho. After they do so, Psycho Krieg is able to cope with what had happened and put it behind him for good. The Vault Hunters then collect the mask and travel back to the statue to return it. With all 3 pieces fixed to the statue, the gate to Valhalla is unlocked. As the Vault Hunters travel inside, they find it holds the most potent piece of Krieg and all the other psychos' minds, an unrelenting rage that manifests itself as the Psycho Reaver. After a long fight with Krieg's rage, Sane Krieg is given a final choice: split from his psychotic counterpart, or sacrifice his agency so they can become whole again. Even with all that has happened, with all the trouble Psycho Krieg has caused, Sane Krieg decides that he's been looking at this all wrong. Psycho Krieg isn't the bad guy. For as much as he denied it, the truth is that it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong, sane or psycho. Each of them have flaws, and only together can they overcome them. With the Calypsos dead, and many of the loose ends around the Borderlands tied, the Vault Hunters would find themselves at their journey's end. It's not entirely clear whether or not they would split up, or if possibly new challenges would appear, bringing them together for a final time. But regardless, their acts would change the state of the Borderlands forever, bringing an era of peace that had not been felt in a very, long time. Nearly a year after the disappearance of Lilith, an unknown group of outcasts on Promethea would find themselves struggling to achieve their individual goals. Anu, an Atlas scientist, would be called into Reese's office after releasing a group of test animals from captivity. Octavio, her street-wise brother, would attempt to find his big break by assisting an assassin bot named Louis, fulfilling one of his contracts. Fran, a rageful frozen yogurt shop owner, would begin serving her customers despite the massive hole in her store caused by Malawan's laser. In Reese's office, Anu attempts to test her new Siren replication device to prove to Reese her work is valuable to Atlas. She then uses it on his robot assistant named Timmy, and even though it is successful, Reese still ends up firing her. Reese is then contacted by Susan Caldwell, the CEO of Tediore, directly before Tedior's invasion of Promethea. As Tediore invades, Anu is able to escape using an escape pod, which takes her from Atlas's space station to Promethea's surface. Meanwhile, Octavio finds himself confronted by a squad of Tediore troops, which he takes down with the help of his friends. Afterwards, he finds a sentient Tediore weapon named Brock, which he uses to get him and Louis to safety before discarding it. They then meet up with Fran at her frozen yogurt store before more Tediore troops find them and blow up the store with a grenade. After landing on Promethea, Anu travels to Fran's store where she is knocked out by the explosion. Once awoken, she travels inside to find the group mostly fine, though they are a little shaken up. After conversing, Reese contacts Anu, asking her to retrieve a vault key that Tediore took from him. To get the key, they travel to the vault using a sewer entrance beneath Fran's shop. On the way, they are confronted by a Tediore soldier who only allows them to pass after they beat him in a game of Vaultlanders, a turn-based figurine combat game developed by Marcus. Once near the vault, they see a group of guardians kill the Tediore soldiers holding the vault key, which they then take. Once at the vault, they travel inside where they encounter the Devourer. After miraculously managing to kill it, the vault monster comes back to life thanks to a strange shard embedded in its tongue. After managing to freeze its tongue, they break the shard from the monster's body. Anu catches the shard, which causes her body to seize and her eyes to glow green. She then uses her siren gun to shoot the monster, sending it to wherever Timmy went as well. The group travel back to Fran's store where they discover the shard has incredible healing properties by shooting each other multiple times. Afterwards, Octavio comes up with the brilliant idea to turn Anu's siren gun into a healing gun with the use of the shard. They finish the prototype for the healing gun by using various random objects found around the store, but to make money off of it, they decide to take their invention to an investment show called Sink or Swim. There, they sabotage another contestant's invention, which gets him killed. Anu then attempts to show off their healing gun, though it doesn't go as planned and Fran is forced to save her. Afterwards, the group is informed that they have been awarded an investment by an angel investor. After traveling back to Fran's store, they talk about starting up their business. Octavio tasks himself with finding a new HQ, while Fran finds staff and Anu gets research supplies. Anu then travels to a morgue where the keeper traps her in a coffin to collect the bounty Tediore had placed on her head. After punching the coffin exactly 1,000 times, Anu is able to escape. Meanwhile, Octavio ends up spending almost all the money by unknowingly buying Fran's shop instead of an actual lab. Fran finds staffing, though it's just a stripper who works at a nearby club. After meeting up, they find that they have made no progress at all. Luckily, their investor doesn't seem to mind, as they invite them to attend a party. At the party, they end up splitting up, where Octavio goes to a VIP lounge, Anu goes to a lab, and Fran goes to a replica of her store. In their respective locations, they are tricked into imprisoning themselves, where they are then confronted by their angel investor, which ends up being Susan Caldwell. She then drags them out onto a stage, where she performs a live demonstration of Tediore's newest weapon, a device that uses the healing shard as well as its harmful counterpart to power a device that first kills, then revives people. Do this enough times, and it becomes a powerful weapon for control. Susan reveals that while powerful at the individual level, Tediore is going to use it to influence entire planets. but before she can finish her demonstration, the healing shard embeds itself in Anu. While Fran is taken back to the replica of her store and Octavio is sent to a cell, Anu is taken to a lab where Tediore attempts to cut the shard from her body. During this, Anu begins to speak with the shard itself in her mind. The shard then talks with her as she realizes that in her ambition, she had pushed people away, but that it's never too late to fix it. Meanwhile, Octavio manages to use Brock to break free of his cell, and Fran kills a group of guards to escape. They both manage to meet up and find the location of the lab where Anu's being kept. There, they find Anu fully awake, and together, attempt to find Tediore's planet-controlling weapon. After confronting Susan, she demonstrates the weapon by using it on Promethea. Anu is then grabbed by a robotic arm, and is reunited with the other half of the shard. This causes her to become Anahantium Anu, a godlike being with the ability to seemingly manipulate reality itself. Twisted by the shard's influence, she immediately uses this power to kill Susan, afterwards using it to kill anyone in the universe who has ever killed someone before. However, a few minutes later, Octavio manages to help Anu resist the power of the shards, and everyone she had killed returns to normal. The shard then disconnects from Anu, thanks her for making it whole again, and flies off into space. Over the next year, the group would found a consulting company to help, as Reese puts it, heal the corporations from the inside out. Meanwhile, Fiona, in search of the Anahantium, learns the story of the group and realizes that the shard, which had embedded itself inside Timmy, was headed for a place called the Gladius Nebula. From this point, the future of the Borderlands remains uncertain. Will the Crimson Raiders travel across the galaxy in search of the Anahantium, or will Nereid's prophesied seventh finally emerge? What threats will the universe face next, and will they bring about the Watcher's prophesied war? Only time will tell. Yet, amidst the potential threats and looming uncertainty, one thing remains true. No matter the challenge, there will always be those who rise up to face it. A faction of explorers who, against impossible odds, have managed to topple tyrants and slay the invincible. They are known by a simple name, one that transcends trivial things like race, gender, shape, or size. They are Vault Hunters, those who will fight until the very end to defend the Borderlands. I want to start off by saying thank you for watching the video. This was by far the biggest project I've done on this channel so far, and the main reason for that is because 6 months ago, when I was just starting to work on this, I had never fully played a Borderlands game. But the reason I made this was because I wanted to see if I could go from knowing nothing to having a complete understanding of a franchise's story, something that will come in handy for a much bigger project planned for next year. But that aside, I wanted to assure you that I'm already in the process of making more timelines, as well as other videos this year, that are just as in-depth, but aren't as lengthy, at least compared to this. I even plan on venturing outside of gaming for one of those videos, which I'm super excited for. If you want to be among the first to know what those are, and maybe even decide the order they release, consider becoming a member. There are tons of benefits, and as the channel gets bigger, I'm only going to be adding more, so this is a great time to jump in. Speaking of members, I wanted to shout out a few of them that I see regularly interacting with the channel. So genuinely, thank you to Yeetendor21, RJ, Vanish Hero, Skylar Oglivy, Tipsy, Entropy Law, Pedro, I Forgot My Sandwich, Shane Padilla, Brenton Anderson, Hunter, Matej Bradascu, Ian Barlow, and the GOAT, Ashton McPherson, who's a moderator over at the OverusedBruh Discord. Again, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. It actually means the world to me, and if you want to do that as well, there's as always a link in the description. With that out of the way, a final thank you to those who simply watched the video. I hope you found it entertaining, and I hope you'll stick around to see more, because trust me, there's a lot more to come.